Chapter 298. The most difficult restriction to break in the competition space at this time. Many sword masters from elite teams had already arrived at the periphery of the Black Forest, but they had all stopped and tried every means to enter. Hearing the sound of footsteps, Ji Xian and the others saw Lu Muyen and her party approaching. Lu Muyen, you've all come. Lu Muyen swept the woods in front of her with her gaze, then asked with a smile, "What's the situation ahead?" Yan Jun's handsome face revealed slight helplessness. "It's precisely what you see, we're trapped outside the mountain forest." Lu Muyen nodded, and her eyes fell on Mo Ling, who was holding an array compass outside the Black Land, investigating back and forth with several other people. Mo Ling and the others, what are they doing? Lu Muyen had a guess in her heart. Yan Jun replied, "They're breaking the restriction." "Is this a restriction here?" Si Nan, who arrived later, just happened to hear Yan Jun's words and asked in surprise. According to Mo Ling and the others' speculation, this is indeed the case. Yan Jun said, "Lu Muyen, you all sure are fast." Luo Li walked up to her and smiled warmly. Lu Muyen smiled lightly and said, "We also just arrived. Young Miss Lu, what do you think of this place?" Mo Ling heard the several people talking and came over with his array compass. Lu Muyen looked at the Black Forest carefully, then after a while she said, "It's true that a restriction was arranged here by someone. As long as it can be broken, the poison in the woods that can corrode a swordmaster's shield will dissipate." Isn't that obvious? Mo Ling and the others already realized it was a restriction. What's the difference between you saying it and not? Although the Crown Prince of Nanshuan was afraid of Lu Muyen, but now with so many people, he wasn't so afraid, pretentious. The most important thing was that aside from the semi-finals where one could kill others to contend for identity jade tablets, other parties weren't allowed to kill each other during other times, and they would be disqualified immediately once they're discovered. Lu Muyen naturally knew this, so she didn't bother to pay attention to such boring people that sought for trouble. Fool. She spit out the word lightly, then went straight to the junction of black soil and brown soil, past the others and squatted down to check. "Don't talk if you don't know how to speak." Mo Ling gave the Crown Prince of Nanshuan a cold look. "Lu Muyen may be the key to breaking the restriction for us. If you speak any more, then leave now." Not only did he want to sit idly and enjoy the fruits of others' labor, but he even slandered. If Lu Muyen was provoked by him and didn't care about this any longer, then they would be the ones to suffer the losses. After all, he and the several other array masters had already studied it. Even if they joined forces, it would take at least 10 days to break the array, and the weak point they discovered may not even be the correct one. By then, even if the restriction was broken, they would all be disqualified from the competition. Luo Li and the others present also stared at the Crown Prince of Nanshuan with displeased expressions, as if they would throw him out of here together as long as he said a word more. The Crown Prince of Nanshuan revealed anger in his eyes, but he didn't say any more. With his cultivation base he still had a chance to advance into the top 10, but he didn't understand arrays, let alone breaking restrictions. He was also anxious to break the restriction and advance to the peak of the mountain, so he naturally didn't dare to offend Mo Ling and the others. There were 6 people who participated in breaking the restriction before, and 3 of them were from superpower kingdoms. 2 of them were disdainful of Lu Muyen, who was squatting and investigating the array. Having good attainments in arrays didn't mean that she could break a restriction of such difficulty. They didn't believe at all that a sword master from a small kingdom really understood such profound arrays and restrictions. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks of course at this time, although they were inwardly contemptuous, but they didn't say anything to ridicule. One was because the Crown Prince of Nangxin's mockery already caused public anger. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, the sword masters present would naturally not let it go. And 2, although they were contemptuous of her, but they also held a glimmer of hope. Either way they felt very conflicted. Inside the castle in the center of the competition space, the elder of the sword sect furrowed his brows and said, "How could they encounter the Black Forest on the way to the top of the mountain? This is bad. Yeah, they sure are so unlucky to have encountered the Black Forest that hasn't appeared for a century. This is a restriction arranged by that grade 4 array master." From memory, all the participating sword masters who encountered this place 100 years ago were all eliminated, right? The elder of the vast mountain sect's expression also looked very ugly. The path to the top of the finals was formed by a combination of various arrays and restrictions, and it was also the doing of the few almighties who sealed this space. No one could change it. The Black Forest was the creation of a disciple of one of the almighties in a moment of interest. He was not only a great array master, but also had excelling talent on restrictions. Among all the array restrictions, the Black Forest deserved to be considered the most difficult restriction here. Even if a grade 4 ordinary array master came, it would be difficult to crack within 3 days. Only those who had excelling talent and restrictions could have the possibility of uncovering its weak point. And all the favored children of heaven that met the Black Forest who participated in that session of the Continental Tournament for Hegemony had no one who could break this restriction and were all eliminated in the end. Of course, if they just lost here, many of the people who performed well in the first 2 competitions would also be brought back by the various sects to be outer pupils, but not participating in the finals was definitely a stain in their life. Didn't Mo Ling and the others say that they can break this restriction in around 10 days? An elder of the Spirit Tamers sect held a glimmer of hope. Their sect had taken a fancy to several people in this competition, so if they were eliminated here, then those people would have no fate in being core pupils. The strong and steady elder of the 8 Extremes sect sneered, "The weak point in the restriction they found is simply a deliberate illusion from that person. Even if they break it 10 days later, it will only break the first layer." The others could only sigh when they heard his words. The elder of the 8 Extremes sect usually appeared unreliable, but he was a veritable grade 4 high-level array master. Could this session's participants also be lost here? The elder of the medicine sect's expression changed. The elder of the 8 Extremes sect folded his arms and smiled. "This old man is rather optimistic about Lu Mu Yen." All the elders present, including those from the 8 Extremes sect, were speechless at his outrageous remarks. Lu Mu Yan's array skills were indeed excelling, and she could even set up a grade 3 array at such a young age, but the Black Forest was a restriction arranged by a grade 4 array master that had long become famous on Tianling continent. How could it be broken? Your expectations for her are rather high. A grade 3 array master can break the restriction placed by a grade 4 array master? What a joke. The elder of the vast mountain sect shook his head. Among the participating swordmasters this year, although he was also very optimistic about Lu Mu Yen, but he wouldn't be so blind. Although the Black Forest is a restriction that was set up by that person when at grade 4 array master, but it's actually only a grade 3 restriction. If others can't break it, it's because they don't have that talent. It doesn't mean Lu Mu Yen can't break it. The elder of the 8 Extremes sect obviously continued to hold his own opinion. He had seen Lu Mu Yen set up arrays through the crystal wall. Her techniques were not only skillful but also superb, just like a great master who had studied arrays for decades. Maybe she really could create a miracle. The elder of the vast mountain sect said with a smile that wasn't from his heart, "Then well, wait and see." The other elders were obviously on the side of the vast mountain sect elder. They didn't think Lu Mu Yen could break the restriction that wiped out the entire group of participating swordmasters 100 years ago. It would obviously be great if Lu Mu Yen could break this restriction. After all, among the hundreds of people, many good seedlings had entered their eyes. If they couldn't arrive at the top of the mountain, they couldn't make an exception and directly bring them into the sect to become an outer core pupil. Lu Mu Yen didn't know that the elders of the 6 major sects were watching her. At this moment, she took out an array compass with a very solemn expression to participate in breaking the restriction. The vague interest in her eyes made many people present twitch the corners of their lips. They were all here with their miserable worries, wondering whether they'd be able to arrive at the peak of the mountain within 10 days, yet she was here so excited as if she had encountered some sort of prey. Chapter 299. Activate the restriction. The array compass in Lu Mu Yan's hand was made by herself, and only the size of a palm. She stared at the array compass intently, and from time to time she would walk around to test the restriction with her spiritual energy. Mo Ling walked to her side, and when his eyes fell on her array compass, he couldn't take it back. "Lu Mu Yen, can you show me your array compass?" Lu Mu Yen was currently in deep contemplation, and when she heard his words, she handed it to him without hesitation. Not long after, Xiao Junyao and the others also arrived here and inquired about the situation of the Black Forest from the others. When he walked to the junction of the black soil and brown soil, his expression instantly changed, and his face also sank instantly. The teammates around had never seen his face change like this. They all had a bad premonition in their hearts. "Junyao, is there something wrong here?" one of them asked with slight worry. The people around him pricked up their ears when they heard this question. Xiao Junyao, being a predetermined pupil of the Heavenly Secret Palace, was in fact known by a small number of people here, so his words were also credible. Xiao Junyao sighed, "Our luck in this session's competition sure is so bad. The Black Forest is the strongest restriction on this mountain." "What? The strongest restriction? Is it difficult to break?" Someone couldn't help but ask. "It's not that it's difficult to break, it's very difficult. 100 years ago, there was a session where the swordmasters also encountered this black forest restriction halfway, and in the end they weren't able to break the restriction and arrive at the mountain peak within the allocated time. Xiao Junyao's expression was dark. That session all participants were eliminated and no one came out of the finals. What? All participants were eliminated. The expressions of many people present changed when they heard his words. Yes. No one made it into the top 100 at that time. Xiao Junyao's handsome expression couldn't resist but be stained with a layer of worry. If they were trapped outside the restriction and was unable to reach the top of the mountain, then even if he entered the heavenly secret palace, he wouldn't be able to become a core pupil of the outer sect, and could only start as an ordinary outer pupil. How could this happen? Then what should we do? Many people were completely dumbfounded. It was impossible for Xiao Junyao to use this kind of thing to deceive them. He was even a predetermined pupil of the heavenly secret palace. Even if he couldn't become a core pupil, but he would at least not need to worry about not being able to enter the palace's gate. But they were different. If they didn't advance into the top 100, it would probably be difficult for them to enter the sect. Brother Xiao, how many people entered the 6 major sects at the end of that session? Someone asked urgently. Xiao Junyao pondered for a while, then said, no more than 30 people. His words made the expressions of the people present change. Some of the predetermined pupils were a little calmer, but they were still very disappointed. After entering the sect, there was still a big difference between ordinary pupils and core pupils. The waves of discussions continued and negative emotions spread. Why don't we try to attack it? Someone suddenly suggested. Others also agreed. Might as well treat a dead horse as if it's alive. Xiao Junyao thought about it and nodded in approval. Let's discuss it a little more. He looked up and saw Mo Ling currently talking to Lu Muyen not far away. They appeared as if they were deaf to their reactions, so he thought a bit and walked over. Mo Ling, do you have any countermeasures? Xiao Junyao knew that Mo Ling was born in a distinguished clan that specialized in arrays, and was also a grade 3 array master himself, as well as a predetermined pupil of the heavenly secret palace. Mo Ling's expression was indifferent, and his cold and solitary temperament added a bit of mystery to his handsome appearance. We found a weak point in the restriction before, but it will take at least 10 days or so to break. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. With a solemn expression, he continued, the most important thing is that we're not sure whether it's a real weak spot or a trap deliberately set by the person who placed the restriction. Since Xiao Junyao knew about the situation of the Black Forest, then he naturally understood that the restriction was difficult to break. He was a little disappointed when he heard Mo Ling's words. Even if Mo Ling and the others found the weak point of the restriction, but they couldn't wait 10 days. Leaving the restriction area didn't mean that they could reach the top of the mountain safely. There were still many roadblocks ahead and it would take time. Ichim? The array compass in your hand is rather extraordinary. Xiao Junyao was silent for a while, and when he looked up, he saw the dark golden array compass in Mo Ling's hand. He had a very light psychic bloodline and could feel the existence of the spiritual items around him. The array compass in Mo Ling's hand was actually made of heavenly frost golden crystal, which sure was extravagant. When Mo Ling borrowed it from Lu Muyen, he naturally recognized the refining materials for this array compass and he smiled bitterly. This array compass belongs to Lu Muyen, I just borrowed it for a look. The heavenly frost golden crystal was one of the best materials for refining array compasses, and the sensitivity of the array compass was many times stronger than that made from ordinary materials. He was fascinated by arrays and also wanted to find heavenly frost golden crystal to refine an array compass, but such spiritual items could be found but not be desired. He just didn't have as much luck as Lu Muyen. Xiao Junyao was surprised. So it's young Miss Lao's array compass. Then he immediately curbed his emotions and smiled. I almost forgot that young Miss Lu is also a grade 3 array master. What Lu Muyen arranged during the Great War was a grade 3 fire array, which was already very rare, and it could even be said that there were almost no people of her age who could achieve such attainments in arrays. Since she actually owned an array compass refined from heavenly frost golden crystal, then the background hidden behind her was probably not so simple either. This kind of spiritual item wasn't something any ordinary person could obtain. Of course, he didn't rule out the fact that she was just lucky, and with her excelling talent, her future achievements in arrays definitely wouldn't be too low. No wonder that all the predetermined pupils of the 6 major sects received orders to secretly win over Lu Muyen. With her talent and temperament, if they focused on raising her, then she would definitely be extraordinary in the future. Lu Muyen smiled and said nothing. Xiao Junyao's prestige among the sword masters in this competition space was very high, and he had a very good ability to gather people together. He wasn't as simple as what his elegance makes him out to be at all. Since we can't break this restriction for the time being, why don't we try to attack it? Xiao Junyao looked at the two and asked. He was a layman in front of arrays and restrictions. Among the people here, Mo Ling and Lu Mu Yen understood arrays the most. We can try. Mo Ling pressed his lips together, and after thinking about it, he looked up at Lu Mu Yen and asked, "What do you think?" "It's good to try several methods." Lu Mu Yen smiled lightly. She had complete confidence in breaking this restriction, but she wouldn't say it aloud right now. She had just let these people toss about first. She didn't request for these people to have a grateful heart for her when she broke it, but she just hoped that they wouldn't cause trouble for her. Then let's try first. Xiao Junyao then organized a group of people to attack the positions Mo Ling and the other array masters designated using various means in an attempt to forcibly break the restriction. Lu Mu Yen didn't join their restriction-breaking army and still continued to take the array compass to research and explore. This sort of restriction wasn't difficult for her, an almighty from the spirit world, but she found that the person who arranged the restriction used several very subtle and intricate methods, so she held the array compass, wanting to study it more. 3 days later, someone touched a point in the restriction during the attacks, and all one saw was a light suddenly emerge from the ground of the Black Forest. When many people were pleasantly surprised, thinking that they had performed a blind cat catching a dead mouse moment and broke the restriction, suddenly a black, transparent light cover shrouded the entire forest, and the air also had a slightly strange smell. "This is bad, quickly retreat." Mo Ling's expression changed greatly and he shouted urgently. A few people in front who accidentally touched the black light cover instantly screamed. After falling to the ground, their entire body trembled and they were foaming at the mouth. "What's going on?" Xiao Junyao's expression was extremely ugly. Mo Ling's eyes were cloudy and uncertain. Someone accidentally touched a mechanism in the restriction and activated it completely. Now, if we want to break it, it'll be even more difficult than rising to heaven. Chapter 300, I can break it. The several people in front were quickly carried back by the people of the same team. Those present didn't dare to approach the black, transparent cover anymore. Xiao Junyao asked 2 physicians to quickly come forward to treat them, but after taking a few pills, it was ineffective. The poison they're inflicted with is too strange, even we can't solve it. Ah! The ear-piercing screams of the several of people continued to resound, and the scalps of the surrounding people all felt numb. Lu Mu Yen swept the poisoned sword masters with her gaze and discovered that one of them, when others were ridiculing her, had said a few good words for her. The others hadn't spoken to slander her at all, and they were obviously from the same team. She furrowed her brows, walked to the few people, took out a bottle of pills and tossed it to them. "Eat it." Those people felt unbearable pain as if they were being burned in flames, and they couldn't think of any reason why Lu Mu Yen would harm them either, so they took the pill and quickly swallowed it. After a while, the several people gradually regained their calm, and the burning sensation on their bodies was replaced with a coolness. They also knew then that Lu Mu Yan's pill had detoxified them. "Thank you greatly, young Miss Lu, for saving us. We will remember this favor." The several people expressed their gratitude to Lu Mu Yen. If it weren't for her antidote pill, they would have probably already met King Yama by now. "No need, it wasn't difficult." Lu Mu Yen smiled nonchalantly. It wasn't a big deal if she saved people who were pleasing to her eye. If it were those that quietly cursed her the fiercest before, she definitely would be too lazy to care. Meanwhile, her calm, breeze-like behavior also made the people around her stunned. The poison that 2 physicians couldn't even resolve was resolved by a single pill from her. This shocked them and also made them want to form a good relationship with her. Maybe they'd even be able to buy some pills for emergency use. "How did you guys get poisoned? Were there any unique feelings?" Xiao Junyao asked. "We were attacking the place that was designated in the restriction, which was closest to the black cover, then we were poisoned by the black light when we didn't retreat in time," one of them said. Another person continued, "After being poisoned, my whole body felt as if it was being roasted in a furnace, and the burning was so bad that it made me feel as if living was worse than death." The several people still had lingering fears when they mentioned this, and the pain was something that would be unforgettable for the rest of their lives. Xiao Junyao's expression darkened and he asked Mo Ling, "What should we do now?" "There's no solutions. Before the restriction was triggered and activated, maybe there was still a chance of breaking the array within 10 days, but now that it's completely activated, it may not even be broken within a month." Mo Ling's cold and proud expression revealed a decadence that had never appeared before. He really tried his best for this restriction, but he just couldn't see through the profoundness of it. Hearing even Mo Ling, this array genius, say such words, the swordmasters present were all dejected. Could it be that they were really so unlucky that they were going to have to pack up and go home this time? The expressions of Yan Jun and the others also weren't that good. They had spies from the 6 major sects come to try to win them over, but if they couldn't even reach the mountain peak, unable to enter the top 100, then even if they entered the sect, they would have no fate for the core pupil of the outer sect, and the treatment would be as different as heaven and earth. Lu Muyen, have you found any flaws? Seeing Lu Muyen continue to play around with the array compass near the light cover after detoxifying the several people, a glimmer of hope inexplicably rose in Yan Jun's heart. Sinan and the others also approached to ask. Lu Muyen's attainments in arrays were even higher than Mo Ling's. Although there wasn't much hope, but it was better than total despair. Lu Muyen glanced at Yan Jun and nodded. I indeed found one. This restriction had been thoroughly researched by her. In fact, it was actually easier to break the restriction after it was fully activated. At least, that weak point was exposed more clearly. What? You're not joking, are you? A young man beside Xiao Junyao couldn't help but doubt. Here, Mo Ling just announced that they couldn't break the array, and they may all be eliminated, yet over here Lu Muyen said that she had found a flaw. What sort of joke was this? Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. Lu Muyen glanced at the man lightly and her face darkened. Do I have to joke about this? Apologies, I was impatient just now and had no other intentions. The man immediately apologized to Lu Muyen when he saw Xiao Junyao cast a reproachful look at him. If Lu Muyen didn't break the restriction because of his words, regardless of whether it was true or not, the people here would definitely blame him. Lu Muyen, you found the weak point of this restriction? Mo Ling's eyes revealed a rare brilliance. Lu Muyen pointed to a position under the black light cover and said, there can break the restriction. Mo Ling and the several other array masters quickly took out their array compasses, walked to the position that Lu Muyen said, squatted down to investigate, and after about an hour they stood up. This is indeed the weak point of the restriction. Mo Ling's solemn expression didn't show relief, however. Seeing that many people revealed excitement in their eyes, he couldn't help but pour a basin of cold water on them, but this weak point needs an array within an array to break, and it's very difficult to break. At least there's nothing I can do. Although the other array masters were only grade 2, but they still had some knowledge and they were even more powerless. We're also powerless. An array within an array wasn't something that any ordinary person could set up. It not only required the array master to have an innate keen sense for arrays, but also needed one to be proficient in calculations. The hope that had been ignited was once again extinguished by the several people pouring cold water on them. Wasn't this even more uncomfortable for them than direct hopelessness? Since young Miss Lu found this weak point, then do you have any countermeasures to break the restriction? Xiao Junyao had a kind and elegant smile on his handsome face. Xiao Junyao's words also awakened the others, who all turned their attention to her. I can break this restriction. Lu Muyen nodded with a smile. The self-confidence and proudness were revealed subconsciously, which bedazzled people. Although they still didn't dare to believe that Lu Muyen could break this restriction that even geniuses such as Mo Ling couldn't break, but there was still a glimmer of hope that rose in everyone's hearts. Remembering that Lu Muyen was able to withstand 3 moves from a peak phase tier 8 demonic beast earlier, the grim looks on many people eased a lot. With her hidden methods, maybe it was possible to break it. Xuanhuan and the others absolutely believed in Lu Muyen's ability, and there was expectation in their eyes. Then we will trouble young Miss Lu today. If there is anything you need help with, feel free to speak up. Xiao Junyao spoke very politely. Lu Muyen nodded. Sure. She didn't want to delay any longer either. Although she knew the method of breaking it 2 days ago, but she didn't say it immediately. 1. It was to wait for these people to toss about for 2 days, and 2. She didn't want to expose her talents and methods so quickly. She walked to the weak point and took out a few round and shiny white jades, then buried them in the ground outside the black light cover. Then she took out a black array flag and planted it above. Her hands formed seals, and one after another, array seals were punched into the array flag consecutively. After a while, the array flag emitted a layer of soft light and several beams of light struck straight into the ground. Then everyone watched her sit cross-legged. Her hands continuously formed seals, and strips of jade-colored runes emerged from her body, entering the array flag. 2 hours later, Lu Muyen finished forming seals, and there was an additional array that was formed from strip after strip of rune seals possessing runes within. She recited a few phrases, pointed with 2 fingers, and a beam of light fell straight down. The array suddenly seemed to have come alive and transformed into 100 jade dragons the thickness of a finger. A portion of the jade dragons entered the ground, and the rest all flew into the air. They roared a few times, then all leapt onto the black cover and began to bite at it ferociously. Merry 300th chapter. Yay! The arc is also coming to an end soon. After this arc our otherworldly handsome MX will appear more together with our lovely violent celestial LMY. Chapter 301. You're just all unpleasant to my eyes. Everyone was stunned when they saw the 100 jade-colored rune dragons come roaring out of the array, then gnawing and swallowing the black light cover bite by bite. The jade dragons with the thickness of a finger gradually grew and became longer and larger after swallowing the energy of the black light cover. Although they ate very fast, but it still took a while. Lu Mu Yen expended a lot of spiritual energy to arrange this array. She poured out a spiritual energy recovery pill to take. Young Miss Lu, is this a grade 3 pill that recovers elemental energy? Xiao Junyao pondered and asked with a gentle smile. Lu Mu Yen stood up and patted her sleeves. It's a grade 3 spiritual recovery pill. What's wrong? Spiritual recovery pill? Confusion flashed past Xiao Junyao's eyes. He had never heard of this kind of pill, but he knew that it was extraordinary by just smelling the fragrance. I wonder if young Miss Lu has any extra pills? Can you sell it to this one? You want spiritual recovery pills? Lu Mu Yen looked at him with a half smile. Not just spiritual recovery pills. This one would also like to buy a few of the pills that Miss used to detoxify them earlier. Xiao Junyao wasn't evasive either. Lu Mu Yen pondered for a bit, then said with a smile, a swordmaster at Sword Sovereign Cultivation Base can recover at least above half their elemental energy using one spiritual recovery pill. There is no time limit either, and it also won't affect the battle. I can sell you 30,000 spiritual stones for one. The antidote pill can cure 100 poisons. Of course, poisons like those ancient mysterious poisons can't be cured. After a pause, she added, 10,000 spiritual stones for one. These two kinds of pills are excellent in saving one's life. I'm also selling it to you at such a cheap price because you're very pleasing to the eye. She folded her arms with an expression as if saying you've got a bargain. Of course, you can decide not to want it if you think it's too expensive. Everyone couldn't resist twitching the corners of their lips when they saw her smug little expression. However, the price for pills with such effects was indeed really fair. If one went to an auction outside of the competition space, then a single spiritual recovery pill would probably cost at least 40,000 spiritual stones. After all, there was no time limit, and pills that could restore more elemental energy during battles were not necessarily available even with money. The pill tower only sold 2 batches each year. Not only was the price very high, but it could only be bought through connections, so it had long been monopolized by distinguished clans. Most importantly, according to what Lu Mu Yen said, the effect of the spiritual recovery pill to restore elemental energy was even better than that of the pill tower's grade 3 pills. This was indeed a life-saving pill. After all, imagine 2 sword masters of the same cultivation base in a battle against each other. If one side took a spiritual recovery pill when their life was at stake, then it would definitely break the tie and be able to kill the other side. It could be seen just how valuable recovery-type pills were. Many people were also moved by this and wanted to buy it. All right. Then I will thank young Miss Lu for your great generosity. Xiao Junyao looked at her with amusement, took out a bag of spiritual stones from his interspatial ring and handed it to her. Lu Mu Yen took out 2 porcelain bottles and tossed them over. Xiao Junyao was a person she could befriend a bit. Judging from his style of doing things, although he was a little slippery, but he wasn't bad. When she was challenged by the Tier 8 demon cultivator that day, Xiao Junyao stood up to defend her too. Regardless of what attitude he had then, at least he wasn't hypocritical. Seeing that the transaction between the two was successful, many people also came over to buy. Lu Mu Yen looked at a few people who had secretly slandered her very harshly before and now wanted to buy some pills. She said coldly, I only sell it to those that look handsome, forget about you all. Her words almost made the several spit blood. What did she mean she only sold to those who were handsome? Did one even look at appearance to sell things? The several people touched their faces. Although it was true that they didn't look as handsome as Xiao Junyao, but they still weren't that bad. Young Miss Lu, you meant to say that our appearances don't enter your eyes? One of them asked unhappily. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. Lu Mu Yen nodded. You sure are all quite self-aware. That man was so shocked by her that he didn't know what to say. If you don't want to sell, just say it. Why make such excuses like this? You favoring one over another sure belittles people. You're just all unpleasant to my eyes, so I won't sell to you. What, you have any complaints? Lu Muyen sneered and raised an eyebrow. These people sure like to turn their noses up at her one. She gave them face yet they didn't want it. As if she was bothered to pretend with them. Aren't you too arrogant? The other person's face revealed slight annoyance. They were large kingdom swordmasters affiliated with Nanshuan. All their interests and benefits were centered on the crown prince of Nanshuan. Earlier, when they said those things behind Lu Muyan's back, it was also because they wanted to cater to the crown prince of Nanshuan, yet who would have thought that it completely offended her. But even if they were a vassal kingdom, they were also heirs to distinguished clans of a large kingdom. Because of their good relationship with the crown prince of Nanshuan, they had long developed an arrogant and domineering temperament in their own kingdom. So upon hearing Lu Muyen say such, they were immediately angered. I'm just being arrogant, what are you going to do about it? Lu Muyen glanced at them, do you want to fight? I'll accompany you all to the end, you can all come at once. Then she stretched out her hand and rubbed it, looking as if she was prepared to fight. The several people chalked. They saw her use the fire array and her violent hand-to-hand combat. She even had a few mighty tier 7 spirit pets, plus she could take on 3 attacks from a peak phase tier 8 demonic beast. Although they were a little hedonistic, but they weren't fools. If they fought with her, they would definitely be beaten black and blue. They had seen what the second prince looked like after he was ganged up on last time. Seeing the several people cower back. Lu Muyen wasn't even in the mood to beat them up anymore. Such timid and cowardly swordmasters really weren't worth for her to use her means to toy with them. Lu Muyen, don't bully people too much. You have so many tier 7 spirit pets, how can we be your opponent? Someone shanked their neck and shouted. Lu Muyen raised an eyebrow and sneered, so what if I'm bullying you all? If any of you have the ability, then also let out a few tier 7 or tier 8 spirit pets to bite me. You really take ignorance as your hobby. The several people were speechless at what she said. If they had a few tier 7 or tier 8 spirit pets, then even without her telling them, they would have long released them to bite her. Where's the need to be afraid of her? Shut up. The crown prince of Nanshuan furrowed his brows and scolded the several people. These fools, they couldn't even beat Lu Muyen, what were they doing provoking her? Ultimately, wasn't it losing his face? Besides, they still had to rely on her to break the restriction. If they infuriated her and she didn't care about it anymore, then who would they go cry to? The several people didn't dare to argue with Lu Muyen anymore after the crown prince of Nanshuan swept his cold gaze over them. Most importantly, whether it was combat power or a verbal war, they were both the losers, so they retreated unwillingly. None of the people here were fools and they saw it clearly. Lu Muyen, this person, not only distinguished between kindness and enmity clearly, but also really held grudges. Thinking of how violently she killed tier 6 and tier 7 demonic beasts one by one in the melee with just directly using her fists, they couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. They all secretly murmured inwardly that it would be best to not provoke this little grandaunt in the future. 2 hours later, the black light cover had been swallowed completely by the jade dragon, and the 100 rune dragons combined into a giant dragon. After devouring all the energy that enveloped the black forest, the giant dragon roared, then swiftly entered into the black soil in the center of the forest. About another 2 hours later, everyone just saw the color of the land within the black forest gradually fade until it finally returned into a normal yellowish brown, but the color was still darker than the brown earth outside. The surrounding trees withered one after another, then finally turned into powder that scattered with the wind, disappearing from this world. One to act arrogantly to her. Chapter 302. Win over the originally dense black forest around them instantly turned into powder and dispersed, and the depressing feeling also disappeared. No one noticed a dark rune dragon with the thickness of a finger slip into Lu Muyen from the sole of her feet. The toxin-stained rune dragon headed straight into Lu Muyen's dantian and loitered. With a thought, a cluster of purple-gold flames seemed to open its mouth to swallow the rune dragon, then dived back into the green sea in her dantian to begin refining. Mo Ling and several other array masters quickly walked to the edge of the black forest and took out their array compasses to check continuously. The restriction is broken. Mo Ling's solemn, proud face revealed a rare trace of excitement. Xiao Junyao stepped forward and swept over it with his mental energy, and a joyous expression rose on his elegant face. It really broke. The others also revealed excitement and joy on their faces when they heard their words. Young Miss Lu, it's really thanks to you this time, otherwise us participants this year really would be wiped out. Xiao Junyao looked at Lu Muyen and said gratefully. Others also expressed their gratitude to her. This time, even the crown prince of Nanshuan and the others didn't oppose her again. Whether it was the pills that Lu Muyen possessed or her talent in arrays, they all shocked and amazed the people here. If she could advance into the top 100, then the 6 major sects would definitely contend for her. Lu Muyen responded with a faint smile, neither taking credit nor being modest. Alright, since the restriction has been broken, everyone hurry up to the mountain peak. It's already been 4 days. Xiao Junyao said to everyone with a smile. There were only 6 days left, and everyone was anxious to get to the top of the mountain as soon as possible to advance into the top 100. After expressing their gratitude to Lu Muyen, they passed the Black Forest and disappeared here. There were not many people left, but there were still people remaining who she wasn't familiar with. Young Miss Lu, can I chat with you alone? Xiao Junyao approached Lu Muyen and asked in a slightly lowered voice. Lu Muyen gave him a surprised look and nodded, sure. The two walked under a big tree not far away. Xiao Junyao arranged an elemental energy shield around them that isolated sound and mental energy from probing in. Sir Xiao is so cautious, could it be that you've discovered some treasure and wanted to tell me to find it together? Lu Muyen raised an eyebrow and teased with a smile. Xiao Junyao chuckled. He discovered that this woman named Lu Muyen not only seemed to be covered in a veil that gave a sense of mystery, but was also very interesting. No wonder Luo Li and the others chased after her so tightly. Young Miss Lu teases. This one has been requested to tell you something important. Seeing his serious expression, Lu Muyen curbed her expression. Tell me. It shouldn't be a trivial matter for you to be so cautious. It indeed isn't a trivial matter. I wonder if young Miss Lu knows about the 6 major sects? Xiao Junyao asked with a smile. What I know is only just the surface of things. Just say what you want to express directly. Hearing Xiao Junyao ask this, she guessed his intention. Young Miss Lu is this smart, I believe you have already guessed it. On behalf of the Heavenly Secret Palace, I invite you. As long as you can advance into the top 100 in the finals, you can directly enter the Heavenly Secret Palace and become the core pupil of the outer sect. Xiao Junyao didn't go around in circles either and explained his purpose directly. Sword masters who wanted to enter the 6 major sects as an outer core pupil through the Continental Tournament for Hegemony must usually advance into the top 20 in the finals of this competition. Of course, if a sword master with certain specialties or special abilities was ranked within the top 100, even if they didn't enter the top 20, they could still be recruited into the sect to become an outer core pupil. What does the Heavenly Secret Palace see in me? My talent in arrays? Lu Muyen asked with a smile. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks, young Miss Lu is excellent whether in your own cultivation talent or your talent in arrays. The Heavenly Secret Palace is eager for talents and would naturally not want to miss out on a genius like you. What Xiao Junyao said was all truth. He had a very thin bloodline with the psychic constitution, that's why he could stand out, but in terms of talent, in all honesty, he was not as good as Lu Muyen. As far as I know, among the 6 major sects, the one that's famous for arrays on this continent is the 8 Extreme sect, and the Heavenly Secret Palace focused mainly on cultivation and nourishing one's nature. Lu Muyen looked at him with a half-smile. Xiao Junyao smiled and shook his head. Young Miss Lu is unaware, but there are special departments in each of the 6 major sects to learn these specialized occupations. The Heavenly Secret Palace is among the top in the path of the sword, taming beasts, alchemy and in arrays within the 6 major sects. Each specialized department has geniuses from the younger generation on this continent, and it is no worse than other specialized sects. Xiao Junyao concealed the pride in his eyes. The reason the Heavenly Secret Palace could become the strongest among the 6 major sects, aside from their crushing strength, was also because during each grand sects competition, these specialized occupations also often win the championship. Lu Muyen knew he was telling the truth. The fact that the Heavenly Secret Palace could stand on the continent for thousands of years and not collapse, and was also at the head of the 6 major sects, meant that their background and foundation was definitely deep. There would also be an endless stream of genius sword masters heading over upon hearing their fame. In addition, there are many connections between the Heavenly Secret Palace and Superpowers Kingdoms and Secret, so it was natural that they could recruit and train many geniuses who specialized in various occupations. It was said that the strongest array master and alchemist both came from the Heavenly Secret Palace. What if I can't enter the top 100? Then wouldn't your thoughts be wasted? Lu Muyen joked. She had an indescribable feeling about the Heavenly Secret Palace. Either way, she wasn't that interested. With young Miss Lau's strength and the means of a grade 3 array master, let alone entering top 100, there's even hope of entering the top 10. Xiao Junyao paused, then said with a smile, The heavenly secret palace has given me news that as long as Lu Mu Yen doesn't drop below 200, then you can enter the heavenly secret palace. But if she fell below 100, no matter how talented she was, she could only start as an ordinary outer pupil. But this was also an opportunity. After all, the 6 major sects wouldn't accept swordmasters below 100. Although he hadn't interacted with Lu Mu Yen for long, but with the only 2 times he did, he still couldn't see through this woman. He didn't believe that she wouldn't even be able to enter the top 100. I need to think about it. Lu Mu Yen pondered for a bit and said with a smile. She didn't immediately agree or refuse. After all, the heavenly secret palace as the number 1 sect still had its merits, and she ultimately hadn't decided which sect to choose yet. That's natural. If young Miss Lu can advance into the top 10 and join the heavenly secret palace, there will also be other rewards from the sect. You can make your final decision after the finals. Xiao Junyao had a sincere smile on his gentle face. This one Xiao is very much looking forward to becoming brother and sister of the same sect. I'll remember what Sir Xiao said and I will consider it carefully. The 2 chatted casually a little more, then separated from each other. Xiao Junyao led his people towards the mountain peak quickly. And not long after he left, several waves of people came to Lu Mu Yen to discuss in detail independently. The general content was basically the same. The 6 major sects all had predetermined pupils who received news from the sect and came to win over Lu Mu Yen, hoping that she would join their own sects. Lu Mu Yen didn't refuse either, and the answers she gave were the same, that she would need to think about it for a while. After the secret conversations with those people were over, as soon as she walked to her group, she received aggrieved gazes from Xinan and the others. Chapter 303. This monarch's appearance is still pleasant to your eyes, right? Seeing Xinan's watery peach blossom-shaped eyes looking at her filled with grievances, Lu Mu Yen rolled her eyes. You're not mentally ill, are you? The expression Xinan was originally about to make froze, and after restraining himself and returning to normal, he approached her and asked, Lu Mu Yen, am better looking than Xiao Junyao, right? You each have your own strengths, why are you asking me this? Lu Mu Yen raised an eyebrow. Both Xinan and Xiao Junyao had handsome looks, but their temperaments were very different, and neither could be compared to the other. Then you sold him pills but didn't sell some to me. Xinan looked at her aggrievedly and accused. Lu Mu Yen was filled with goosebumps. Talk properly. Xinan coughed lightly, shook his golden foil folding fan and rolled his peach blossom-shaped eyes. You're a woman who has no humor. Luoli and the others couldn't resist laughing. Xinan's move may have been once useful against many women, but it was completely useless in front of Lu Mu Yen. They were happy to see him become a joke. With your appearance, you need to use it towards a man who is interested in the same sex, and they'll probably show pity and tender care for Jade. But I'm not a man and am not interested in your type. Lu Mu Yen rolled her eyes at him. Xinan's skin was just too thick and he had no boundaries just to obtain pills. The corner of Xinan's lips twitched, and his face darkened instantly when he remembered being flirted with by men before. Lu Mu Yen, sell some of the pills you sold to Xiao Junyao to us too. Yen Jun glanced at Xinan. This shameless, snarky, poison-hearted person could also experience such a slump. They had been thinking about those pills for a long time, but they just couldn't ask for it. Seeing her sell them to Xiao Junyao earlier, they also saw this as an opportunity. Of course, her saying that Xiao Junyao was handsome made them brood. How was that smiling tiger one more handsome than them? That's all fine, we're considered friends. I want to accept spiritual stones from you guys this time. I'll gift everyone too. She had seen how these people defended her earlier, and she had always been generous to those who she could regard as friends. The several people were stunned when they heard her words. Lu Mu Yen would be this generous? The sun didn't rise from the west, did it? It was only after an extra 2 white porcelain bottles appeared in each of their hands did they come back to their senses. Lu Mu Yen, are you sure you don't want spiritual stones? Ji Xian asked. This money-loving woman wasn't emotionally attacked by something today, was she? The others also blinked at her, surprised by her generosity. Lu Mu Yen glared at the few people speechlessly and said, I've always been generous, all right? Return it if you don't want it. The several people quickly put away the porcelain bottle. What a joke, this woman was rarely this generous, and even if they needed to pay spiritual stones they'd still buy it, so how could they return it? Afterwards, the several groups of people advanced together and also encountered various obstacles in the middle, but they were all avoided one after the other. When they arrived halfway up the mountain, a cold voice suddenly sounded in Lu Mu Yan's sea of consciousness. She stopped in her steps and her gaze appeared slightly solemn. I have something to do, you all go to the top of the mountain first. Lu Mu Bai asked, Yenner, it's already halfway up the mountain, what do you have to do? Do you need us to accompany you? The others also expressed that they could accompany her. Although they didn't know what she wanted to go do, but she probably wouldn't delay advancing in the rankings for some personal affairs. Big brother, I really have something to do. After I finish, I'll rush to the top of the mountain, don't worry. Lu Mu Yen said with a small smile. Lu Mu sighed. Little sister needed him less and less as she grew. Although he was a little disheartened, but he was also proud of her. Go. Come back early. Your goal is to be in the top 10. Lu Mu Bei's eyes were filled with doting and trust. Lu Mu Yen responded with a smile, said a few words to Lu Li and the others, then turned and set off in another direction. Where are we going? Mo Yen discovered that there was a mental energy transmitted towards Lu Mu Yen earlier, and he felt that it was familiar. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks, Lu Mu Yen replied while rushing. The Thunder Monarch we met at Sunset Cloud Mountain Range asked me to go see him. When Xue Xue heard that it was the Thunder Monarch, his body shuddered. Why was that abnormal monster here? Be careful in a bit. Mo Yen wasn't sure about the Thunder Monarch's purpose, but he wasn't afraid. Although his current cultivation base had only reached peak phase tier 7, but he could still use some secret skills and means. It was still possible to take Lu Mu Yen to escape the pursuit of a tier 9 demon cultivator. I just feel that his purpose isn't that simple. Lu Mu Yen couldn't help furrowing her brows when she recalled the questions Thunder Monarch asked her that day. All the way there was the Thunder Monarch's mental energy to lead the way, and it went very smoothly without encountering a single demonic beast blocking their path. Lu Mu Yen discovered that they were still far away from the destination, so after having Bing Ji return to his original form, she flew towards a place closer to the top of the mountain. After more than half a day, Lu Mu Yen jumped off Bing Ji's back and she was slightly amazed by the sight in front of her. Ahead, the area was enveloped in dark clouds. It was a sea of darkness with thunder and lightning, and flashes of lightning struck down while the bottom was like a void. A majestic palace stood in the thunder domain where thunder and lightning intertwined. This is actually a thunder domain. Bing Ji smacked his lips with some fear in his eyes. He had ice attribute demonic energy, and thunder and lightning had restraining effects on his skills. Lu Mu Yen looked at the thunder domain with a layer of interest in her eyes. She could comprehend all the elemental energy attributes in this world, including the thunder attribute. When the thunder crocodile attacked her with the 3 moves, the thunder attribute element in her body was inexplicably awakened. Now, seeing the thunder and lightning flashing in the thunder domain, she actually felt a sense of intimacy. Come in. A cold and emotionless voice sounded in midair with pressure. As soon as his voice fell, a path spontaneously formed in the thunder domain to isolate the surrounding thunder and lightning. Lu Mu Yen stepped in without hesitation, and the thunder element around her actually entered into her body like specks of stars. The Thunder Monarch, who saw this scene in the palace, was stunned. Could it be that this woman was born with a thunder constitution? But with his comprehension on the thunder attribute, it was impossible for him to be unable to detect what her physique was. If it wasn't the innate thunder constitution, then she at least should be a swordmaster who could comprehend the thunder attribute. The Thunder Monarch's eyes narrowed. It would naturally be excellent if Lu Mu Yen could comprehend the thunder attribute elemental energy. Lu Mu Yen walked very slowly. After the surrounding thunder attributes entered her meridians, it was as if it cleansed her meridians, and she felt a tingling sensation that was very comfortable. When she was about to reach the end, the thunder attribute element in her body was nearly full and could no longer penetrate into her body. She walked out of the path, raised her feet and walked quickly into the large hall. 2 tall and heavy palace gates opened automatically and she stepped right in. As soon as she entered the door, it felt as if her body swayed, then she was teleported into a great hall. There was only one figure in the great hall, sitting on a throne. He wore a loose cyan brocade robe, half leaning on the armrest of the throne, his posture lazy and his whole body exuded a cold and murderous aura. The only difference from the last meeting was that his face was no longer hazy. Lu Mu Yen could clearly see his handsome face with sharp edges and corners, but with a hint of femininity. The ends of his eyes were lightly raised, his dark eyes deep and cold, and his facial features were intricate, although somewhat delicate and soft, but it wasn't entirely feminine. The combination of coldness and laziness gave one a romantic and unrestrained feeling. How is it? This monarch's appearance is still pleasant to your eyes, right? One two-faced person. Usually used to describe outwardly kind but inwardly cruel people. Chapter 304. Give me a reason, how is it? This monarch's appearance is still pleasant to your eyes, right? Lu Muyen didn't expect that the Thunder Monarch, who appeared so cold and noble, would ask such a question and said with a smile, "It's all right." The Thunder Monarch looked askance at her, snapped his fingers, and a seat fell beside Lu Muyen. "Sit." Lu Muyen wasn't polite either. After sitting down, she asked straightforwardly, "I wonder what business you have with me, Thunder Monarch? I don't have much time to delay here." She still had to rush to the top of the mountain to compete for the top 3. If she was delayed and couldn't make it to the finals because of this, who would she go looking to pay for the debt? Lu Muyan's attitude was very cold and indifferent, while the Thunder Monarch's gaze was deep. One couldn't tell his emotions. This was the first time he had been treated too rudely. Sure was interesting. "Are you not curious as to why I am in this space?" A wine glass appeared in the Thunder Monarch's hand, and he took a sip as he asked lazily. He replaced this monarch with I, which could be regarded as a negotiation on an equal footing. Lu Muyen raised her eyes. "I'm curious, but I have some guesses." "Let's hear your guesses." The Thunder Monarch shook his wine glass and said lightly, "Presumably the you in the competition space is your original body, right?" Lu Muyen observed that the Thunder Monarch's expression didn't change, but his pupils constricted, and she continued, "What I saw in the Sunset Cloud Mountain range was just your double." "Ha!" The Thunder Monarch pursed his light pink lips as laughter overflowed, but he didn't sound that happy. "You are indeed not an ordinary swordmaster." "You're wrong. I'm just an ordinary swordmaster." Lu Muyen leaned on one hand on the armrest, her tone light. The Thunder Monarch stood up and walked from the throne with a wine glass in his hand, tall and graceful. He walked to Lu Muyen and squatted down. His deep eyes were as if they were going to suck her in, and after a while, he spit out a sentence, "Let's sign a contract of equals." Lu Muyan's expression was indifferent, and there was no joy at all in contracting a Tier 9 demonic beast. "Give me a reason. Isn't it worth your risk to be able to contract a mutant royal race demonic beast like me?" The Thunder Monarch brought his face closer to Lu Muyen, his breath against her face, and his voice was hoarse and sexy with a hint of temptation. "Don't forget, I'm a Tier 9 demonic beast. A contract of equals. Only you benefit. Keep away from me." Lu Muyen furrowed her brows and pushed the Thunder Monarch away as she said with arrogance and dominance, "So what about a Tier 9 demonic beast? I'd rather not have a demonic beast than have one with ulterior motives by my side." Seeing his eyes flash, she sneered, "Maybe others will be overjoyed by this kind of free pies falling from the sky one situation, but I don't want to contract you at all." What a joke! There must be some secret with the human almighties for the original body of this thunder beast to be bound in this competition space. Her mind would be broken if she felt that she was benefiting from this contract. Even if she really had benefits, but the result would definitely be endless trouble. The Thunder Monarch was startled, obviously not expecting that he would be disliked by this human sword master with low cultivation base. "What do you want?" the Thunder Monarch asked, taking a deep breath to suppress the blazing fire in his chest. Lu Muyen looked at him coldly. "Give me a reason why I should contract you first." "You are such a bold woman." The Thunder Monarch chuckled, stood up, and walked back to the throne. "1,000 years ago, when I was still a cub, I inadvertently passed through a space rift and flowed to this interface. It only took 100 years for you human almighties to discover this space and bring waves after waves of high-level sword masters here to sweep this place clean. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks, at that time I was just a Tier 6 demonic beast, powerless to fight. Originally, as long as one cultivated to be able to transform, one could break through the shackles of this space, yet who knew that those human powerhouses directly set up a great array to seal this place up. Later, every 20 years they would send a group of young human sword masters into this space to participate in the continental tournament for hegemony, and the goal was mainly to maintain the balance in numbers of demonic beasts. When I advanced to Tier 9, I once had a great war with your human almighties for a few days. In the end, because of the restraint of this place, I failed to kill them successfully. Of course, they couldn't do anything to me either, so we came to an agreement. Since you have the ability to fight against those human almighties, then why don't you force your way out?" Lu Muyen pondered for a moment, then, as if remembering something, suddenly looked up at him and said, "No. It's your original body that can't get out, right?" "Exactly. This monarch's original body is indeed bound by a mysterious force in this space. Unless I can break through to Tier 10, then I can't get out with my own strength." The Thunder Monarch's deep and dark eyes deepened. Lu Muyen raised an eyebrow. "Then you should cultivate to Tier 10. With your mutant talent, although it isn't easy to advance to Tier 10, but it shouldn't be that hard." As long as this monarch remains in this space for one day, it is impossible to cultivate to tier 10. The Thunder Monarch's eyes were filled with coldness. What? Is it the restraining power of this space, or the array arranged by the human almighties? Lu Muyen asked in surprise. Both. Among those human almighties, there was one array master who used the energy of this space here to arrange arrays, making it so that all the demonic beasts in this place are unable to cultivate to tier 10. The Thunder Monarch snorted coldly. If it weren't that the human sword masters discovered this space when he was only tier 6, how could it be possible for those people to easily succeed? Lu Muyen chuckled, raised an eyebrow and said, "You're bound here by the human powerhouses, so why do you think I would help you? The grievance from this demonic beast isn't small. If he left this space, then she really didn't know if he would become a scourge or not. What if I gift you a great fortuitous opportunity?" The Thunder Monarch drank the wine in his cup and a drop of red liquid slipped from his lips along his collarbone, extremely sexy. Lu Muyen rolled her eyes secretly. This Thunder Monarch was a little too seductive. Luckily she didn't like this type of man, otherwise she'd probably be enchanted by him. Meanwhile, Bingji, who stood on her shoulder, wasn't so calm. His small eyes narrowed and he couldn't resist repeatedly shouting beauty. Inwardly. "You're bound in this space by the human almighties, and you obviously have a lot of resentment towards the humans. Although a large, fortuitous opportunity is good, but I don't want to become the sinner among humans and let you out to harm this land." Lu Muyen said straightforwardly. The Thunder Monarch looked at her in surprise and snickered. "I didn't expect you, such a petty woman, to also have such an awareness. Truly rare. Don't forget that I'm also a human sword master." Lu Muyen rolled her eyes at him. "I do have some resentment towards those human sword masters, but am not hostile to humans." The Thunder Monarch assured in a sincere tone, "As long as you take me out of this space, I promise not to mess around and kill human sword masters arbitrarily." His enemies had never been the human sword masters of this small interface. Lu Muyen didn't miss the monstrous hatred that flashed across his eyes very quickly, but that hatred really didn't seem to be directed at those human almighties. It seemed that this Thunder Monarch was also a demon cultivator with a story. "What you mean is that we will sign a contract of equals, and he'll use the spirit beast ring to take you out of this space, then you'll be free." Lu Muyen tapped lightly on the armrest of the chair with her finger. The Thunder Monarch stared at the wine glass in his hand. "You're absolutely correct. One Chinese idiom meaning to obtain something beneficial / what you want / fortuitous, as if it just fell into your lap so easily." Lu Muyen lowered her eyes and pondered, and the Thunder Monarch didn't urge her either. The Thunder Monarch's cultivation base hadn't yet reached tier 10 and he couldn't go out himself, but as long as he contracted her and became her spirit pet, then he would no longer be bound by this space. No wonder he kept asking her about the contract of equals back in the Sunset Cloud Mountain range and showed joy when he learnt that he could act freely. Her signing a contract of equals with her spirit pets was also a way to buy the hearts of the beasts. Forcefully bounding them together to make them surrender could indeed make them loyal, but it was still different to the loyalty from surrendering completely willingly. And she never liked to force things even when it came to contracting spirit pets. Agree with him. Mo Yan's voice sounded in her sea of consciousness. Lu Muyen asked in surprise, "Why?" Mo Yan rarely intervened in her affairs, so he must have his own reasons for making her agree so decisively. The Thunder Beast is one of the mutant royal demonic beast races in the upper interface. After tier 10 there will also be a second mutation and they're very strong. I felt the bloodline of a Thunder Beast royal race on him. His identity is definitely not simple, and he may even be able to help you in the future. He wandered to this interface with this space since he was a cub, which meant that he may have been born here. I just feel that there are some secrets hidden here. How did you judge that he was born here? The hatred in his eyes just now was very strong, but it wasn't aimed at the human almighties. I think it should be related to his background. Lu Muyen asked in confusion. Mo Yen replied, "The spiritual force in this space is so rich. If you can stay here long term, you human almighty sword masters would probably have long organized people to come in to cultivate." "You mean to say that there's a time limit for entering here?" "All outsider beings in this space can only stay for a year and a half at most, then they would be forcibly sent out, so even if the Thunder Monarch wasn't born here, then he must be closely related to this place. Does this have anything to do with contracting him?" Lu Muyen furrowed her brows. Contracting him meant big trouble, and those human almighties wouldn't allow him to leave here. Her current strength was simply not enough to fight against those human almighties. Because he has a big connection with this place, he will definitely be able to use a camouflage method to deceive those human almighties, then the original body will follow you out of here. Most importantly, he should be cultivating a very secret skill, which is extremely bloody and dark, but it can help him break through to tier 10 and escape the shackles of this space and the human array. If that time comes, he will definitely take revenge when he goes out. If he cultivates the secret skill plus his tier 10 cultivation base, the so-called almighties of you humans wouldn't be his opponent at all, and the entire continent will be brewing with bloody rain and wind. That kind of secret skill requires the blood of human swordmasters to condense into a blood pool for him to absorb the essence. By that time your family might suffer too. He has only cultivated that to the first layer. After learning that you can help him, he chose to stop temporarily. This shows that although he has hatred in his heart, but his humanity still hasn't been destroyed, and is not a demon cultivator who likes to kill. But if you reject him with his deeply buried hatred, he will completely go to the extreme. After cultivating the secret skill, it will be a big problem if he left this space. Lu Muyan's brows knitted even more deeply. If that was the case, then it was really tricky. There should still be a secret skill in your contract of equals, right? Cast one on him when you contract him. If he dares to kill innocents arbitrarily and affect this small interface, then you can also restrain him. Mo Yen pondered for a while, then continued to speak. This is a method of killing two hawks with one arrow, one, which is the most beneficial to you, and the big fortuitous opportunity might even be surprising. Lu Muyan's lowered gaze flashed with a sharp glint and the corners of her lips raised into an arc. Mo Yen, just what is your identity? The contract of equals skill stipulated that humans and demonic beasts contracted based on an equal relationship. However, ultimately, this skill was created by ancient human cultivators, so it was naturally more beneficial towards humans. After contracting, the spirit pets couldn't even have killing intent towards their owners at all, otherwise they would be punished by the laws of heaven and earth, but the humans wouldn't be affected by this. Although they couldn't directly kill their spirit pets, but there were several secret skills that could suppress disobedient spirit pets. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. Mo Yan's insights and knowledge were not what an ordinary royal race demonic beast should have. You'll naturally know my identity once you leave this small interface. Mo Yan replied lightly. Alright, I'll wait for the day you tell me. Lu Muyan believed that Mo Yan's identity was definitely no simpler than the Thunder Monarch. Mo Yan's eyes were dyed with a little smile. I will. After talking with Mo Yan, Lu Muyan looked up at the Thunder Monarch and asked, if I take you out of this space, then what if the human almighties find out? They won't let you and I go, would they? You don't need to worry about this. A Thunder Beast race has a talent that can confuse one's aura. At the time, I'll place a clone here to ensure that they can't identify real from fake. The Thunder Monarch raised an eyebrow slightly, filled with confidence. Do they know about your clone in the Sunset Cloud Mountain range? Lu Muyan asked after thinking for a bit. The Thunder Monarch shook his wine glass. They only know that there's a tier 9 demon cultivator in the Sunset Cloud Mountain range, but they don't know that it's my clone, otherwise they would have long joined forces and used various methods to kill me. Then that's good. Lu Muyan nodded. The Thunder Monarch must have his own secrets to be able to send a clone out to cultivate to tier 9. She wouldn't touch upon it. The main body couldn't cultivate to tier 10, so his clone would naturally be affected and be stuck at the bottleneck too. So if the Thunder Monarch wanted to break through tier 10 and pursue higher cultivation strength, then he must leave here. You don't have to worry about the human almighties. Since I want to sign a contract of equals with you, then I will naturally be restricted by the laws of heaven and earth and will not be able to have any thoughts of harming you. I won't believe that your skill is completely equal either. The Thunder Monarch looked at her, half smiling, and added, even am willing to choose to believe you. Take a gamble. Don't you dare to gamble? What's there to not dare to gamble? Lu Muyan chuckled and raised an eyebrow as she said, then let's talk about the conditions of trade. With us contracting, I will gift you a large opportunity, but after leaving here, although the contract cannot be annulled, but you cannot restrict my freedom. The Thunder Monarch's lazy expression revealed some seriousness. Lu Muyan hooked the corners of her lips. After she left, all she wanted was for this big ball of trouble to hurry up and get lost, so she naturally wouldn't restrict his freedom. Besides the large opportunity, you have to promise to help me do 3 things. She smiled meaningfully, the stars in her eyes amazingly bright. On the Thunder Monarch's baseline, being able to squeeze something from him was something gained. She wouldn't just let him slap his butt and leave so easily. What 3 things? The Thunder Monarch's eyes revealed some vigilance. This woman was a little fox. With even slight carelessness one might fall into her trap. I haven't figured it out yet, I'll save it to use later. Seeing that the Thunder Monarch's expression changed slightly, she continued with a smile. Don't worry, what you'll have to do will definitely be within our ability. Alright. I promise you. The Thunder Monarch smiled bitterly. Did he still have any choice? Aside from contracting Lu Muyen, he did have another choice, but he didn't want to practice that sort of sinister method. The Thunder attribute elemental energy in you has awakened, right? The Thunder Monarch looked at her deeply and asked. Lu Muyen didn't hide it either. Yes. Then perfect. The big opportunity I'll give you is related to the Thunder attribute. Technically there's a formal English equivalent being kill two birds with one stone, but I just wanted to translate this literally, to show more of the Chinese culture. Anyways, it's pretty straightforward. 2xd 2 slap one's butt and leave is a colloquial saying of complaint describing someone who just slips away, usually after causing trouble or inconvenience for others to clean up. Chapter 306. First to arrive at the mountain peak 3 days later, Lu Muyen came out of the palace. The surrounding thunder and lightning roared down while she walked across the thunder domain as lightly as walking through ground. As soon as she came out of the thunder domain, a circle of cyan light enveloped her, and she instantly disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already standing at the top of the mountain. She glanced around and found that no swordmasters had arrived yet. She walked towards the quaint and ancient building made of black iron on the top of the mountain. As soon as she entered the gate, a sudden mechanical sound echoed throughout the mountain. Lu Muyen is the first to reach the top of the mountain. Lu Muyen is the first to reach the top of the mountain. Hearing the sound from the array, the participating swordmasters who were rushing to the top of the mountain were stunned. In a swamp area, 7 people were sitting on a large boat magic tool rowing forward. The surrounding demonic beasts kept leaping out and the people on the boat waved their magic tools one after another. The black swamp was dyed red with demonic beast blood in only a short while. As soon as they reached the opposite side of the swamp, the sound of the array notification echoes in the air. What? Lu Muyen's the first to reach the top of the mountain. How's that possible? One of the men exclaimed. Xiao Junyao stood at the bow of the boat with a refined aura. He appeared indifferent, then said after a while, we were still a step too late. She will be my biggest rival in competing for the top 3. It was as if he had long expected this. He was actually looking forward to meeting her. Young lord, aren't you looking too highly on her? A beautiful-looking woman behind Xiao Junyao said disapprovingly. Her array talent is truly amazing and she had endless tricks, but the final top 10 competition is a one-on-one battle. It's difficult for her to even rank in the top 9. She said this not because she was disgusted with nor slandering Lu Muyen. On the contrary, she actually admired that woman. Most of those who entered the top 10 in each session won using their strength. Those who were professionals in their vocations would be valued by the sect, but they would be more inferior in terms of their cultivation base. For example, Lu Muyen's talent in arrays was definitely among one of the top 5 in the younger generation, but her cultivation base couldn't be flattered. Among the top 100 she was probably the only sword monarch. Yeah. There will be various strict rules for each of the top 10 battles. In one session the use of arrays wasn't allowed. If this time they also stipulated that the use of arrays as support is not allowed, her weakness would appear. The man who spoke first said. They also admired Lu Muyen, especially since she broke the restriction so that they wouldn't be all wiped out, but they still didn't think highly of her combat power. Xiao Junyao shook his head with a smile. You're all wrong. Her ability to easily kill tier 6 and 7 demonic beasts in the melee has long highlighted her combat power. I have a hunch that she will amaze everyone this time. Since young lord thinks so highly of her, then let's wait and see the final result. The several other people still didn't quite believe that she could enter the top 5. In a forest densely packed with the corpses of demonic beasts in the surrounding area, a cold-looking, black-clothed man carried a huge long sword and looked up at the mountain peak not far away. Arrived this fast? He hooked his lips upwards. Interesting. When they were about to reach the top of the mountain, Yan Jun and the others were struggling to fight the demonic beasts that kept crawling out of the lake. Fuck, we're working so hard here, but Lu Muyen's already reached the top of the mountain. Sinan killed the last octopus beast and cursed foully. Ji Xian sighed and patted his shoulder. This is the gap between one and another. When Luo Li heard that Lu Muyen had reached the top of the mountain, a sunny smile bloomed on his face from his heart. He just knew that she would definitely enter the top 10. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks Lu Muyen so fast. There's still more than a day left before the end. Helian Lai wiped the blood from his body and sighed. Yi Qinghan's face overflowed with a dense smile. She was always just so dazzling and amazing. Lu Mu Bai and the others were also extremely happy. After these several groups of people that somehow met again finished killing the demonic beasts, they each rushed towards the top of the mountain quickly. They couldn't be too far behind Lu Mu Yan. The crown prince of Nanshuan and the others were still trapped on a cliff when they heard the sound from the array and were dumbfounded. Lu Mu Yan's actually the first one to arrive. Then she'll be ranked at least 10th. One of them said through gritted teeth. They were still working so hard to break through this restriction that they accidentally triggered over here, while Lu Mu Yan had already reached the top of the mountain over there. How could they who had grudges against Lu Mu Yan bear this? The crown prince of Nangxin's expression was extremely grim, and he kept bombarding the weak point of the restriction. After a while he closed his eyes and said, "Don't fight with her in the future anymore. This woman is just too strange and inauspicious." As the crown prince, he wasn't as impulsive as he appeared to be. Although he was unconvinced by Lu Mu Yan, but he had to accept the fact that she was indeed very powerful. That woman was also very petty. Luckily they didn't have time to do anything substantively vicious towards her earlier, otherwise he would have another big enemy after leaving the competition space. He believed that as long as they didn't provoke her again, she wouldn't be their enemy. After all, that woman was very intelligent. Xuanhuan is the second to reach the top of the mountain. Xiao Junyao is the third to reach the top of the mountain. Luo Yi is the fourth to reach the top of the mountain. Yan Jun is the fifth to reach the top of the mountain. Si Nan is the sixth to reach the top of the mountain. Luo Li is the seventh to reach the top of the mountain. He Su Feng is the eighth to reach the top of the mountain. Ji Xian is the ninth to reach the top of the mountain. Yi Qinghan is the 10th to reach the top of the mountain. Within one day the sound of the mechanical array continued, and 6 hours before the end of the specified time, the top 10 of the finals were born. The most unexpected person was Yi Qinghan. After all, Lu Mu Yan and Chu Han had become the most watched dark horses in the last 2 matches. Even if they received some criticism for advancing into the top 10, but it was still acceptable. However, Yi Qinghan entered the top 10 without a sound, which surprised not only the other sword masters in the competition space, but even the elders of the 6 major sects. Lu Mu Yan, who was sitting cross-legged at the first gate, opened her eyes with a small smile in her eyes. She didn't expect that most of the top 10 people were familiar to her. Others say I'm secretive and hide my abilities, but it seems that Qinghan is hiding too. Mo Yan didn't dislike Yi Qinghan. His constitution is a bit special, plus with the advancement of the Golden Eagle King, it's normal for him to advance into the top 10. A special constitution? Lu Mu Yan looked at Mo Yan in surprise. There were many differences between this continent and the former immortal cultivation world, and there was a very large difference in special constitutions. There were many spiritual constitutions that she had never even heard of. He has the psychic constitution, even stronger than Xiao Junyao's bloodline. Mo Yan said lightly. Psychic constitution? I only know of the innate spirit body constitution. The innate spirit body constitution could communicate with the natural forces, and the speed of absorbing the spiritual force of heaven and earth was more than twice that of an ordinary cultivator. Below the nascent soul stage there would be no bottlenecks, and even after advancing to the higher levels, their spiritual energy would be denser than ordinary cultivators. As far as she knew, the innate spirit body constitution did exist on this continent, but she didn't know what was special about the psychic constitution. Chapter 307. Competition for the top 10 rankings. Mo Yan knew that she wasn't clear about many things on this continent, so he explained patiently. There are several types of psychic constitutions. Xiao Junyao can keenly perceive the existence of spiritual herbs and spiritual items, and absorbs the spiritual force of heaven and earth twice as fast as the ordinary person. He also has a very strong comprehension for cultivating certain secret skills and talents, and there is no bottleneck for him until the Great Achievement realm. Isn't Xiao Junyao's ability very similar to yours then? Lu Mu Yan teased with a smile. Mo Yan looked at her calmly. His talent is pretty good among humans, but it's nothing compared to many demonic beasts, and not even as good as the fire cloud mink. Alright, our Mo Yan is the best. Lu Mu Yan praised with a flowery smile. Mo Yan looked askance at her lightly. His eyes were dyed with a hint of helplessness, and a doting that even he didn't notice himself. The psychic constitution has a special characteristic. Their mental energy is more than double that of the ordinary, and they absorb spiritual force of heaven and earth much faster. No matter what manuals they cultivate, they could achieve twice the result with half the effort. Then that's a bit similar to the innate spiritual body constitution. But you said that there are several types of psychic constitutions. Which one is Xuanhuan's? Xuanhuan's psychic constitution is mainly manifested in his taming of beasts. With his mental energy, the number of contracted demonic beasts won't be limited like other spirit beast masters. Moreover, he has a natural affinity for demonic beasts. It will be much easier than ordinary spirit beast masters to form a contract. And as long as his psychic constitution has been cultivated to the later stage, after learning certain secret skills, he can control demonic beasts without contracting them. It's a very rare and heaven-defying constitution. So that's how it is. But he didn't seem to show this kind of talent before. Lu Muyen said while rubbing her chin. His psychic constitution was sealed by someone before. The last time we saw him, his seal had been partially undone, so hell becomes stronger and stronger in combat too. Mo Yen didn't hide it either. Lu Muyen furrowed her brows. It was sealed? Can you break it? Why break it? The person who sealed it definitely didn't have malicious intent. On the contrary, it's a kind of protection for him. Mo Yen continued. A person with a special constitution shouldn't really rely too much on this constitution in the early stages. With his ability sealed, his cultivation base will also be more solid, which will be more conducive to future advancement. What's more, the seal in his body is being broken layer by layer, and they're triggered each time at a critical moment, allowing him to progress after reaching the limit. This way is the most conducive to his growth. Lu Muyen understood and poked Mo Yan's leg with a smile. You sure know a lot, Mo Yen? I naturally know more than you. Mo Yen stiffened, then turned his head away. By the way, does Ming Xiu have a special constitution? Out of everyone I know, he's the one I can't see through the most. The flamboyant, red-clothed figure suddenly appeared in Lu Muyen's mind, and she blurted the question out. When Mo Yen heard her suddenly mention Ming Xiu, his eyes that were as deep as the sea grew much deeper. There are definitely a lot of secrets on him, and there are as many as 3 kinds of seals in his body. As for constitution, I can't tell. Either he has a magic tool that can hide his true talent, or his cultivation method is special. Lu Muyen was surprised. There are 3 kinds? Good or bad? Good and bad, I'd say. But I can't see through the specifics. I discovered the 3 seals in his body when he was at Sword Monarch. After his cultivation base reached Sword Sovereign, I could no longer see through him clearly. Mo Yen pressed his lips together. That man always gave him a mysterious and powerful feeling. His constitution was very special, and he was especially sensitive to seals, so he could barely see through the seals in Ming Xiu's body when he was only at Sword Monarch. But he could only see that there were seals and didn't know what the specific seals were. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks to be able to even make him, one who was once a king of a portion of the demon realm, feel mystery and danger, then it meant that this man wasn't an ordinary swordmaster at all. His background and identity were definitely not as simple as Monarch Ming of the Ming Chamber of Commerce Alliance. His identity isn't simple. If you really want to choose to be with him, you'll probably encounter a lot of trouble in the future. There was once where he sensed a very faint aura on Ming Xiu that felt like it was from the same interface he came from. But it was only for a short time that one time, so he couldn't be certain whether he also came from that place like him. Lu Muyan's hand unconsciously caressed the ice bangle on her wrist and gently rubbed it. After a while, she said leisurely, "Since I acknowledged him, then I'll accompany him up in heaven and down in hell and depend on each other in life and death. As long as he doesn't leave, then I too won't abandon." She would now think of Ming Xiu from time to time, and she also understood her own heart for him. Since Ming Xiu dared to provoke her first, then in this lifetime that man must be hers. Mo Yen was stunned for a moment, and a slight bitter feeling spread in his heart, but it was quickly suppressed by him. Among all the men who admired and loved Lu Muyen, Ming Xiu was indeed the most powerful and excelling existence. In the central castle of the competition space, a white-clothed man stood by the window with his hands by his side. With only just that one silhouette of his back, there was a noble and elegant temperament. At this time he was holding a bracelet formed from beads carved from soul-nourishing wood, constantly rubbing it. The red and sexy thin lips overflowed with a graceful and elegant arc, and he lowered his head and muttered to himself, "Woman, soon we'll be able to meet more often." If Lu Muyen was here, she would definitely be surprised, because the bracelet held in the man's hand was precisely the one she asked manager Jiang, after the auction organized by the Ming Chamber of Commerce Alliance in the central city, to hand over to Old Yi to give to Ming Xiu. After the time limit of 10 days arrived, the voice of a high-level powerhouse resounded throughout the mountain top. The top 100 swordmasters in the finals has been born. Please look at the rankings on your own identity jade tablets. The swordmasters outside the 100, immediately crush your identity jade tablet and teleport out of the competition space. All swordmasters within the top 100 will remain at the mountain top to await the result of the top 10. Everyone took out their identity jade tablets to check, and the people outside 100 sighed in disappointment, but they didn't dare delay and quickly crushed their identity jade tablets. In an instant, countless groups of white lights wrapped around the people outside of the first 100 and teleported them out of this space. As you all know, the competition for the top 10 rankings is very important. It also determines your resource allocations and status after you arrive at a sect, so you 10 will show all your strength to fight today. Yes. The top 10 answered all together. Each session's competition for the top 10 will have different rules. The rules are not designated by us, the judges at the time, but instead, the organizers have already set them 10 years ago. I will now announce the rules of this session. First, after the competition begins, the 10 of you will enter the stone gate behind you, and 2 of you will randomly walk to the same battle stage. There will be a referee on the battle stage, and the winner of the 2 will enter the gate on the left after the battle to continue to fight for the top 5, while the losers will go to the gate on the right to fight for the rankings in the bottom 5. Second, when you are fighting, you are not allowed to take any pills, use arrays, summon spirit pets, and use talismans to attack. Third, in the battle for the top 10 rankings, you are not allowed to kill the opponent. If the opponent is killed, whether it is intentional or unintentional, you will be disqualified from the competition and will never be allowed to enter the 6 major sects. The above 3 points are the rules for the top 10 competition. Anyone who violates any of them will be immediately disqualified from the competition and teleported out of the competition space. Please remember not to do so. Alright, you may all start now. After the judge's voice fell, the 10 people stood up in unison, pushed open the stone gate behind them and walked in. Chapter 308. Not optimistic about her hearing the judge announce the rules for the competition for the top 10, the other 90 people present were all stunned. If you can't use spirit pets, then what about spirit beast masters? Someone whispered. Yeah. Spirit beast masters relied mainly on spirit pets to fight. If they can't summon spirit pets, then what do they use to fight with people? Actually, Lu Mu Yen suffers the most from these rules. Yeah, she has a lot of pills that can replenish elemental energy and their quality is rather high. If she can take pills, she may be able to tire the other party out. Most of her usual battles, she uses arrays to help. Now that it's stipulated that arrays can't be used, her strength has weakened by almost half. Most importantly, she had several kinds of ferocious Tier 7 spirit pets. If there weren't these rules, then she can crush her opponents just by releasing her spirit pets to fight. Except for not allowing the use of talismans, the other 3 are all disadvantageous for Lu Mu Yen. It'll be difficult for her to advance in the rankings. There was slight gloating in this voice. Even if she loses all the battles, she can still be ranked 10th. At least better than us. The man's tone was slightly bitter. The discussions below continued, most of which revolved around Lu Mu Yen. Because of the rules of this competition, more than 2/3 of the people present believed that Lu Mu Yen would lose completely. The 90 people were then taken to a wide hall in the building with a crystal wall in front, and the situation inside was fed back via the array. That was to say, although these 90 people couldn't participate in the last competition, but they could watch the battle through the crystal wall. In the central castle, the elders of the 6 major sects also gathered to watch the competition. Why are the rules so harsh this time? The Spirit Tamers sect's elder furrowed his brows in dissatisfaction. The power of them, spirit beast masters, were all about their spirit pets, so how could they fight if they couldn't summon spirit pets? The expression of the elder of the 8 Extreme sect also didn't look very good. Exactly. Why can't you use arrays? Isn't this deliberately making things difficult? You're not even allowed to use pills. The rules of the competition this time really are harsh. The elder of the medicine sect snorted coldly. Although the people from the other 3 sects also felt that the rules were a bit harsh this time, but it didn't involve themselves as much, so they didn't open their mouths to express their dissatisfaction. These rules just seemed to be aimed at Lu Mu Yen and basically blocked her path. Luckily she was the first to reach the top of the mountain, otherwise it'd be difficult to even enter the top 10. The vast mountain sect elder said. The elegant and wise-looking elder of the heavenly secret palace glanced at the complaining people. The organizers have already set the rules for the competition of the top 10 years ago, and there's no such thing as targeting anyone. It can only be said that Lu Muyen has bad luck. Furthermore, if you want to become a powerhouse of this land or someone worthy for us to value in training, then you must not be too weak in your combat power. Otherwise, when the sect organizes them to go out for experience and training, or when they receive high-level tasks, they might die. Then it's simply a waste of resources we used to raise them. If none of these things could be used, they're still capable of fighting, and that's the genius elite worthy for us to raise. Then he added, of course, Lu Muyan's situation is special and needs to be treated differently. What do you mean by treated differently? The elder of the sword sect glanced at him suspiciously. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. The elder of the heavenly secret palace took a sip of tea, moistened his throat and said, even if she can't win any of the battles at all, our heavenly secret palace still wants her. You old thing, you're dreaming. The elder of the 8 Extremes sect glared at him. This damned old thing really had a great imagination. With her excelling talent in arrays, she's not suitable for your heavenly secret palace. It's only right to come to our 8 Extremes sect. She can contract so many high-level spirit pets, which means her talent in taming beasts isn't weaker than arrays, so she's naturally more suited for our spirit tamers sect. The elder of the spirit tamers sect snorted. Those old things even want to snatch a spirit beast master from him? That's just too much. The elder of the medicine sect couldn't resist saying, her ability to control fire is very strong. It would be a waste to not be an alchemist. As long as she comes to our medicine sect and raised well, she will definitely become an alchemist above grade 3 in the future. Her physique and fists are very tough. It's rare to find a body cultivator. She has no future with you all. It's only reasonable for her to come to our vast mountain sect. The elder of the sword sect disapproved. It's obvious that she has higher talent in sword skills. At this age she can even set up a sword array. She's most suited to be a sword cultivator. Immediately the several elders started arguing, all revolving around where Lu Muyen should go. In the end, the elder of the 8 Extremes sect and the elder of the vast mountain sect almost fought with each other. But it could be heard from the tones of the several people that they didn't have hope in Lu Muyen advancing into the top few ranks. They were only glad that she reached the top of the mountain first, which meant that at worst, she could be ranked 10th in this continental tournament for hegemony. Meanwhile, Lu Muyen, who had already entered the arena, didn't even know that she was now a fragrant bun one, and the 6 major sects all wanted to take it for themselves. After walking along the path through the first door for a while, she walked to a battle stage and jumped up. After a while, a young man she didn't know walked in. When the man saw that his opponent was Lu Muyen, joy flashed in his eyes. He had the same understanding as the people outside. Lu Muyen, who was now without pills, arrays and spirit pets, wouldn't be able to do anything. She would just be a stepping stone for his advancement. The man followed suit and jumped onto the stage. He cupped his hands at Lu Muyen politely and said, "This one is He Su Feng, please give some advice, young Miss Lu." "Young master He, please?" Lu Muyen responded with a faint smile. An elderly man sat cross-legged on a stone pillar on the battle platform. When he saw that the two were ready, he said, "No killing is allowed during the battle. Whoever gets knocked out of the battle platform or admits defeat, the opponent will win. Let's begin." As soon as the elderly man's voice fell, He Su Feng mobilized his long sword and poured his elemental energy in, then slashed towards Lu Muyen not far away. Lu Muyen appeared completely carefree, and when the sword aura was about to hit her body, she flashed and dodged easily. He Su Feng had long heard that Lu Muyen's footwork was like a ghost. Seeing it today, he realized that she was indeed extraordinary. He didn't dare to underestimate her and be careless either, so he directly used his killer move. Ice wolves formed from condensed ice attribute elemental energy attacked Lu Muyen one after another, and the temperature around them dropped rapidly. For ice walls suddenly emerged from the ground and surrounded her. The ice wolves were as if alive and even howled. With their sharp claws they attacked menacingly. Lu Muyen's eyes were filled with interest. This person's ice attribute elemental energy had already reached the understanding realm, which was rare among the younger generation. No wonder he entered the top 10. However, although the opponent had a strong comprehension in his element, but his cultivation base was only at middle phase sword sovereign. In addition, he usually relied on his ice element condensation to battle. Lu Muyen didn't even bother to use her sword array against him. She snapped her fingers and clusters of crimson flames sprang out from her fingertips, instantly turning into mighty majesty fire lions, roaring as they met the ice wolves that pounced over with their sharp claws. one that she was highly desired by people. Chapter 309. Win the First Battle. Lu Muyan's fire lions condensed from fire elemental energy were stronger than the ice wolves in both size and ferocity. The surrounding temperature that had dropped to zero began to warm up, and the heat overwhelmed the cold air, taking the advantage. The fire lions and the ice wolves began biting ferociously and fought as soon as they clashed. Because Lu Muyan's comprehension of the fire elemental energy had already reached great achievement realm, He Su Feng, who had only comprehended to the understanding realm, couldn't compare, so the result was evident. The ice wolves were bitten deeply at the neck by the fire lions, and the ice slowly melted little by little, finally swallowed by the fire lions. The surrounding ice walls were also melted into steam by a large fireball Lu Muyan flicked out. He Su Feng was shocked and his expression changed. Just as he was about to use his trump card for the finale, who knew that the woman in front of him disappeared on the platform in a flash. He used his mental energy to sweep everywhere but couldn't find her. After a few breaths of time, he suddenly felt the space around him fluctuate. He spun around and swung his sword but was slow one beat. A slender, white jade hand gently pushed. He Su Feng's side was struck by the palm, and the strength seemed very gentle, but in fact, it contained a powerful physical strength. He quickly mobilized his elemental energy to resist, but he still flew out of the battle platform like a kite with a broken string, and there was no time to resist at all. The old man on the pillar glanced at Lu Muyan in surprise, then announced with a serious expression, "Lu Muyan will advance to the next match. Please enter the left stone door to await the next opponent. He Su Feng lost the first match. Please enter the stone door on the right to wait for the next opponent." Immediately, a mechanical sound rang through the array and throughout the building. "The first match is over. Lu Muyan wins." Hearing this voice, the people on the other four battle platforms who were still fighting were stunned for a moment, thinking in unison that Lu Muyan had defeated He Su Feng so quickly. How powerful. Although He Su Feng was not well known in the competition space, but he was a genius elite of a superpower kingdom. His use of the ice elemental energy attribute could rank in the top 3 among the younger generation. The speed of using his ice elemental energy condensation was also close to an instant. Knowing that he was in the top 10, none of the others would underestimate him, but no one thought that he would be defeated by Lu Muyan in such a short time. And the swordmasters who watched the battle in front of the crystal wall were all stunned. After a while someone cursed, "Fuck, Lu Muyan can instantly generate fire elemental energy without using arrays. The comprehension of her fire elemental energy is stronger than He Su Feng's. What an abnormal monster." Tisk Tieske, her comprehension of fire elemental energy has probably reached the great achievement realm. Someone couldn't help but sigh. Because Lu Muyan used to base her use of fire elemental energy on arrays, it gave others the illusion that the flames she had condensed before were all relying on arrays. They never thought that she had true capabilities. Her movement is also so fast. No wonder He Su Feng was struck off the stage before he could react. He Su Feng underestimated his opponent. That's true. If He Su Feng prepared better and played his trump cards more fully, it's still unknown whether Lu Muyan can win or not. He Su Feng lost a little wrongly. What a pity. If you lose, you lose and there's nothing to pity. But after winning this battle, Lu Muyan's next opponent wouldn't underestimate her anymore. Currently, most people believe that Lu Muyan was hiding her talent in fire elemental energy comprehension, which made He Su Feng underestimate the opponent. She also used her ghostly movement technique to take advantage of his inattentiveness to sneak attack, and that was how she won the battle. Towards her next battle, although they didn't think she would win, but they were anticipating it more than before. After a while the mechanical voice kept sounding. Xuanhuan wins. Luo Yi wins. Xiao Junyao wins. Yin Jun wins. The victory of the four was expected by everyone except Xuanhuan. That swordmaster named Xuanhuan is so powerful. Sinan used his trump card and still lost. Someone sighed while watching the battle scene on the crystal wall. Most importantly, Xuanhuan may have not even used his all. How do you know? Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. Don't you see that giant sword he's carrying on his back hasn't even been used? If that giant sword isn't his trump card, then he's got something wrong with him to carry a giant sword on his back wherever he went. It's more likely that it's his trump card. I wonder who he'll meet in the next battle. No matter who, Xuanhuan is a formidable opponent. After the battle, one was allowed to take pills to adjust. After about 2 hours, all 10 people returned to their peak state and began to continue to battle. The top 5 and the last 5 draw lots to determine your opponent. Those who didn't draw an opponent will obtain a bye 1 into the next round. The referee's voice sounded in the building. Those who didn't draw anyone will have a bye. Doesn't that mean whoever is in the top 5 with luck will directly enter the top 3? Yeah. But luck is also a part of strength. Who dares to object to the organizer's rules? After the judge's voice fell, 4 small balls suddenly appeared in front of the 10 people. After choosing one, they crushed them to know their opponents. Lu Muyen didn't act immediately. When there was only a small ball left in front of her, she picked it up and crushed it. It was empty. The top 5 battles are Xuanhuan versus Luo Yi, Xiao Junyao versus Yanjun. Lu Muyen has a bye. Last 5 battles, Xinan versus Yisu Feng, Luo Li versus Ji Xian. Yiqinghan has a bye. At the beginning of the second round of the battle, most of the swordmasters who watched the battle in the large room couldn't help but envy Lu Muyen's luck. Lu Muyen actually has a bye, then didn't it mean that at worst she'll still be third? Fuck, her luck is so heaven-defying. Being beautiful is an advantage. Rubbish, didn't you see that Lu Muyen was the last one to draw lots? What does it have to do with looks? I'm just sighing. Being able to take the 3rd place in this continental tournament for hegemony means she'll be able to become famous throughout the continent. Maybe the little beauty can even take 1st place in the end. Someone joked. Stop dreaming, is first easy to obtain? Any of those 4 people can skip stage battle. Lu Muyen is only an advanced phase sword monarch. On her cultivation base she's already being crushed. It's impossible to win. That's true, Lu Muyen's cultivation base is too low. If she reached sword sovereign cultivation base, then it wouldn't be certain who wins or loses. Lu Muyen's not even 17 years old. She's already a genius among geniuses to have a cultivation base of advanced phase sword monarch. Stop being so picky. The battle's begun, just watch quietly. Lu Muyen had a bye but she couldn't leave, so she closed her eyes and waited for the next competition. After an hour, the mechanical voice sounded again. Xuanhuan wins. Xiao Junyao wins. Xinan wins. Luo Li wins. After the announcement, the judge's voice sounded. The 2 winners and the one with a bye will continue to draw lots. The one that received a bye will wait for the next round. I wonder if Lu Muyen has any luck to get a bye this time. If she has another bye, the worst rank she'll obtain is 2nd. Many people were discussing this. During the draw there were 3 more balls in front of her. Lu Muyen grabbed one and crushed it casually. Xiao Junyao's name was revealed. One did you know by meant the transfer of a competitor directly to the next round of a competition in the absence of an assigned opponent? Google definition. I did not, and I was so confused when the word bye appeared so many times while translating this chapter XD. Anyways, that's what a bye means, ha ha ha. Chapter 310, Battle Xiao Junyao. After the drawing of lots, the judge's voice sounded. Xiao Junyao versus Lu Muyen, Xuanhuan obtains a bye. Xinan versus Yiqinghan, Luo Li has a bye. After his voice fell, Lu Muyen got up and pushed open the stone gate in front of her. At this time, Xiao Junyao was already standing on the battle platform and looked at her with a smile. She tapped her toes and jumped onto the stage. Young Miss Lu, we indeed meet again. Xiao Junyao's expression wasn't at all surprised, as if he had long expected it. Lu Muyen smiled lightly and said, Young Master Xiao, how are you? Allow Muyen to experience young Master Xiao's skills today. She had hoped to draw and compete against Xiao Junyao before, mainly because she was very curious about the psychic constitution and wanted to see it in person. Haha, this one Xiao has long wanted to exchange pointers with young Miss Lu. Xiao Junyao laughed heartily. This time there was still an elderly man sitting on the pillar. He looked at the 2 of them expressionlessly and said, The battle starts now. The rules are the same as before. After he finished speaking, Xiao Junyao cupped his hands and bowed towards Lu Muyen. Young Miss Lu, please. All right. The 2 of them mobilized the elemental energy in their bodies. Xiao Junyao took out a brush, drew a few Taoist seals in the air, splashed ink at will, and a few characters carrying elemental energy spun out and shot straight at Lu Muyen. Lu Muyen's eyes flashed slightly in surprise. She didn't expect Xiao Junyao to be a Confucian cultivator one. The elemental energy characters he condensed carried an aura of righteousness. Such methods were very rare in this continent, while they belonged to a separate method of cultivation in the immortal cultivation world. Lu Muyen took a step back. She waved her hands like fluttering butterfly wings as she formed seals, and the speed was so fast that one couldn't see her movements clearly. Then jade-colored runes emerged from her body, forming a rune belt that tightly bound those words in mid-air. making them unable to advance even half a step. Xiao Junyao still had a gentle, elegant smile on his face. He pointed his 2 fingers towards the brush. The brush kept splashing ink midair, and ink-colored strokes freely combined, finally forming a realistic landscape painting that was faintly visible in the air. The majestic mountain in the painting immediately seemed to come alive. After he inserted elemental energy, it flew out of the painting and landed, hovering on top of Lu Muyan's head. Seeing that he used the Confucian Taoism so skillfully, Lu Muyan understood what Mo Yen said before, that there was no bottleneck for those with the psychic constitution when learning skills. Although Xiao Junyao's Confucius Taoist skills wasn't at the great achievement realm, but he could still use it to such an extent at such an age. In the immortal cultivation world, one must at least be a core formation stage cultivator to be able to work it like this. Her eyes were sparkling bright, with a smile of admiration on her lips. A green flute appeared in her hand. She placed the emerald green flute on her lips and blew it gently. A melodious and cheerful tune jumped out of the flute, and the mountain that had fallen above her head danced with the flute. The flowers and trees in the landscape painting also swayed to the rhythm of the flute, as if they were dancing cheerfully. Only then did Xiao Junyao's expression change. He naturally heard that the flute had a bewitching effect. He almost fell into that kind of joy just now. If he hadn't carried that treasure on him, he might have lost. The swordmasters in front of the crystal wall were also stunned. Is this really a battle? Why do I feel like they're competing in arts battles of the zither, chess, poems and paintings? Yeah. Lu Muyan even knows sonic wave attacks. Her talent is too heaven-defying. Xiao Junyao's most powerful path of Confucianism seems to be suffering in her hands. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. On the battlefield, Xiao Junyao's gaze changed. As if he had made a decision, he kept forming seals before his chest and chanted. Immediately he poured all his elemental energy into the brush that was still swaying in the air. The brush flickered instantly, the style of painting changed, and wind blades were drawn from under his brush one after another, breaking through the air towards her. The wind blade was not like ordinary sword aura wind blades, but instead, it possessed incomparable frost and cold. If the brush didn't stop, the wind blade would continue. Then the brush hooked and the cold wind blew and howled. It didn't appear like a picture at all, as it all condensed into a solid form. The dual attributes of wind and ice. Indeed really good, but they're not enough. Lu Muyan chuckled, unbridled. The style of tune changed, and a song reminding one of shining spears and armored horses at war poured out of the flute. The ink painting that danced in the air also gradually disappeared on this battle platform with the change of style, without a trace. Then she put away the flute in her hand, and 10 golden lights flashed out from her sleeve, blocking her front directly. When the wind blade was mixed with the cold wind and attacked, she formed a few Taoist seals and quickly inserted them into the flying swords. The 10 flying swords hummed as if they were alive and shot out in an instant, continuously dancing in midair, its speed rising and rising, until a golden light flickered, as if the flying swords grew golden wings, fluttering about. The 10 golden swords' rotation rapidly increased and finally turned into 100 golden butterflies, fluttering their wings and headed towards the wind blades. The two collided, and for a moment neither gave in, but at this time Lu Muyan moved. She used flash steps, her figure continuously flickering on the battle stage, then she struck Xiao Junyao with her palm one after another. Xiao Junyao's combat power in Taoism was very strong, but his physical strength was far from Lu Muyan's. While he had to control the brush to create wind blades, he had to avoid Lu Muyan's palm wind, which caused him extreme misery. He had long expected that Lu Muyan wasn't simple, but he didn't expect her to have so many tricks. These tricks she played against him today had never been shown at all, which made him unable to guard against her. Lu Muyan's mental energy was very strong, and it was nothing to split her focus into 3. She constantly flashed back and forth around Xiao Junyao using her flash steps. Each time Xiao Junyao used his mental energy to detect her figure, take out his long sword, and slash towards it, he only ever cut past numerous afterimages. Suddenly Xiao Junyao felt a strong aura approaching from behind him. He knew that if he spun around, it would be an immediate defeat. He hurriedly shifted his feet to the side, but a jade-colored rune belt unexpectedly emerged from beneath his feet, tightly binding them. Piyu! A palm struck him, and after Xiao Junyao was struck, the jade belt around his feet loosened. He retreated back more than a dozen meters, but when he was just about to fall off the battle platform, he finished pinching the seals, and an ice wall suddenly appeared behind him to block his body. Lu Muyan wasn't disappointed. Xiao Junyao's ice attribute element comprehension had clearly arrived at the bottleneck to the great achievement realm and was much stronger than He Su Feng. She stretched out a hand and tapped towards the ice wall Xiao Junyao slammed into. Fireballs the size of wash basins fell heavily, one after another, without any rest. The fireballs smashed the ice wall and melted it into water vapor while Xiao Junyao dodged the fireballs falling from above his head clumsily and in a sorry state. At this time, the golden butterflies fluttered their wings even quicker, tossing themselves towards the cold wind blades to disperse them. Xiao Junyao had already exhausted a lot of elemental energy and it became difficult to continue to control the brush right now. Lu Muyen seized the opportunity, smiled, put her hands together, then separated them again. Suddenly, a vine made of wood elemental energy condensation emerged from beneath the stage and quickly wrapped around Xiao Junyao's feet, pulling hard. Xiao Junyao, who was on the edge of the stage, dodging the attacking fireballs and golden butterflies in a sorry state, was taken by surprise and tugged by the vine, falling directly off the battle stage. One guessed Confucius existed in their world too. Haha. I wanted to use the word scholar because the word used here has the archaic meaning of scholar. However, in the part where I translated it as Confucius Taoism, the actual Chinese is, from my understanding, is only related to Confucius and should have been the author's intent. I could be wrong, but I'll be sticking with Confucius. Chapter 311. Begin a bet. As Xiao Junyao was dodging Lu Muyan's variety of attacks, an unexpected vine suddenly entangled his feet. He couldn't avoid it in time and was pulled, landing heavily below the battle platform. The elderly man on the pillar gave Lu Muyen a thoughtful look and announced the result. Lu Muyen wins, entering the final round. The mechanical voice immediately resounded in the building. Lu Muyen wins. On another battle platform, Luo Yi and Xuanhuan, when hearing this sound, couldn't help but be surprised. Lu Muyen actually beat Xiao Junyao. Xuanhuan looked at the silver-clothed brocade man with a grim expression, and a faint smile rose on his stern face. Since they've already decided the winner, then there's no need to delay here. Take out your all to fight me at your strongest. All right. Luo Yi's unhurried voice was very pleasant. After watching the battle between Lu Muyen and Xiao Junyao, the swordmasters in front of the crystal wall were once again dumbfounded. He lost just like that? One of Xiao Junyao's team members said in disbelief. This is too unexpected. Lu Muyen can defeat Xiao Junyao. I feel so unreal right now. One of them touched his chest and said, Lu Muyen's various tricks and methods are too many. Xiao Junyao just couldn't guard against it at all. Someone complained. Having so many tricks and methods is because Lu Muyen has that ability. If it were you all, can you make Xiao Junyao be in such a sorry state? People who had already developed admiration for Lu Muyen retorted. That's right, Xiao Junyao didn't lose wrongfully. What do you mean? Didn't you see that from the very beginning, the battle situation was all under Lu Muyen's control? The more Xiao Junyao fought, the more of a sorry state he's in, but Lu Muyen's still so calm like the wind and clouds. Even if he didn't lose now, as time goes by, his elemental energy wouldn't be able to support the consumption from his magic tool, and had inevitably be knocked down by Lu Muyen. An elite swordmaster of a superpower kingdom said slowly. You really can't tell just by looking. Lu Muyen, this woman hides so deeply. Many people sighed within. Lu Muyen hides deeply, and the one named Xuanhuan hides even more deeply. Look, Luo Yi's injured by him. Luo Yi actually lost. Just watch Xuanhuan's background. He hasn't even pulled out his giant sword on his back. The biggest dark horse this year is probably Xuanhuan. There'll be an interesting show to watch when Lu Muyen meets Xuanhuan. When these two dark horses collide, who do you think will win? Naturally Xuanhuan. Don't you see that he acts cleanly and decisively in each battle, and his strength hasn't even been fully exerted? He's ruthless and accurate in dealing with each opponent. Such an opponent is too scary. I'm also optimistic about Xuanhuan. Under absolute strength, all kinds of tricks may not be effective. I'm actually more optimistic about Lu Muyen. After all, she's always been able to amaze us since the beginning of this competition space. Xuanhuan has been firmly first place since the first round. To say that he's also amazing isn't too much either. He just doesn't have as much gossip as Lu Muyen, and his reputation isn't as loud as hers either. After Luo Yi lost to Xuanhuan, the swordmasters present were discussing who would win the match between Lu Muyen and Xuanhuan. One of the swordmasters who loved to gamble opened a bet and 2/3 of the people bought Xuanhuan's win. Although Lu Mubai and the others didn't like to gamble, but they believed in Lu Muyen, so they bet all their belongings down on her. Watching the group of people betting in the big room, the personnel of the organizers who were guarding all around were also itching. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks, there were also small bets in private, and most of them were betting on Xuanhuan winning. In fact, most people thinking that Xuanhuan would win was also justified. First, Xuanhuan's cultivation base was at advanced phase sword sovereign. Lu Muyen was an advanced phase sword monarch. He was an entire stage higher than her. Second, Xuanhuan was vigorous and resolute in his previous battles. He had few tricks but were all extremely effective with huge momentum, and his attacks were very ruthless. Meanwhile, Lu Muyen, despite all her various tricks, always gave people a feeling that her true strength wasn't that good, and she just didn't win as thrillingly perilous. After all, most of the sword masters present were used to fighting with magic tools and elemental energy. Layers after layers of means like Lu Muyen's couldn't be played out by them at all. Therefore, deep-rooted in their hearts, they all believed that Xuanhuan's fighting style was the embodiment of true strength. Lu Muyen's methods, short-term, may be successful, but once others were prepared for it, it would be difficult to win using them. Tomorrow Lu Muyen and Xuanhuan will fight. The other two groups will fight first. The referee's voice sounded timely. Although the match was delayed until the next day, but Lu Muyen and Xuanhuan weren't allowed to leave their rooms. After the two of them fought, they started to adjust their status after taking pills. On the same day, the last 5 in the rankings were also decided, but not many people paid attention to it. Sinan and the others left the sealed rooms after their matches and waited with the others to watch the last match on the second day. Of course, as Lu Muyen's admirers or friends, they naturally spent a lot of money to bet that Lu Muyen would win. First, they just felt that Lu Muyen wouldn't lose so easily. If they bet on her, she had more than half of the possibility of winning. Right now the odds were 1 to 5. If they won, then their winnings would flip 5-fold. Second, if Lu Muyen, that petty and sly woman, came out and found that they bet on Xuanhuan instead of her, she would definitely beat them up one by one. What treatment and buying pills after that, they definitely would all just become imaginary. In the central castle, the elders of the 6 major sects weren't calm anymore. Who would have thought, who would have thought? Lu Muyen and Xuanhuan would actually be the last to compete for first place. An elder of the heavenly secret palace couldn't help but sigh. Xiao Junyao was already an official pupil of the heavenly secret palace, and they always had high hopes for him. The original certainty of him entering the top 3 just flew away like this. In the competition for the 3rd place, Luo Yi defeated Xiao Junyao too, which was acceptable, but the sudden appearance of Xuanhuan and Lu Muyen caught them by surprise. Haha, I've already said that this girl Lu Muyen would definitely amaze and shock everyone, but you old things didn't believe me. The strong and sturdy elder of the 8 extreme sect laughed, then looked askance at the elders present. Humph, what are you being so smug for? Even if Lu Muyen wins the championship, she still won't be your 8 extreme sect's pupil. The vast mountain sect's elder snorted coldly. Between Xuanhuan and Lu Muyen, he was still more optimistic about Xuanhuan. Compared to Lu Muyen, Xuanhuan was the swordmaster that wanted to spend the larger effort trying to win over. Even if Lu Muyen doesn't choose the 8 extreme sect, she wouldn't choose your sect that only knows how to use brute force. The elder of the 8 extreme sect and the elder of the vast mountain sect hadn't liked each other for a long time. So don't argue anymore. Lu Muyen, a woman, just used the wood attribute elemental energy. She's most suitable to come to our medicine sect to learn alchemy. Enough. As for the belonging of Lu Muyen and Xuanhuan, they must have already made a choice in their hearts. No matter how much you quarrel, it's useless. Seeing that the elders of the several major sects were arguing about the candidates again, the wise elder from the heavenly secret palace furrowed his brows slightly to stop them. Not only in the heavenly secret palace, but even among the 6 major sects, he was an extremely prestigious existence, so after he opened his mouth, the elders of each sect no longer quarreled about snatching people. Humph, how Shan, old man, do you dare to gamble with me? The elder of the 8 extreme sect couldn't help but provoke the elder of the vast mountain sect when he saw that the juniors started gambling. Wanyesi. I'm pretty sure Xuanhuan was meant to have had a bye, but now he's battling Luo Yi, so. Oh. I'm pretty sure author made a slight mistake. XD2 seems like author corrected it here, haha. Chapter 312. Battle Xuanhuan. The elders of the 5 other sects here obviously didn't expect that the elder of the 8 extreme sect would open his mouth to provoke, and their eyes revealed a look of watching a good show. The elder of the vast mountain sect sneered, "How should we bet?" As if he'd be afraid of this damned old man from the 8 extreme sect. Xuanhuan's strength wasn't as simple as he revealed in the competition just now. Even if Lu Muyen had some ability, she definitely wouldn't win. I bet that Lu Muyen wins. The elder of the 8 Extremes sect said without hesitation. Didn't you want my peak quality beast blood for a long time? If I lose to you, it'll be yours. Alright. I'll bet Xuanhuan wins. The elder of the vast mountain sect was also unequivocal. If you win, he'll give you the advanced level array chart I obtained before. It's a deal. Both of them were satisfied with the bet and immediately high-fived to sign off the contract. Do you all also want to make a bet? The elder of the 8 Extremes sect turned his eyes and looked at the elders of the other sects with a smile. The elders of the other sects were also interested, but as representatives of their own sects, it was obviously inappropriate to learn from the juniors and gather together to start betting. They weren't as shameless as these two people, so they all refused. A day passed in a hurry, and the day only just lit up when the voice of the judge sounded in the building. Now the last battle will begin. Rules as usual. Lu Muyen and Xuanhuan opened their closed eyes respectively, got up and walked into the last room. The two stepped onto the stage at the same time, and only then did Lu Muyen raise her head to scrutinize Xuanhuan, this powerful opponent. He was dressed in an entirely black outfit. His facial features were angular and cold, and there was a storm hidden in his dark eyes, but he possessed a wild and uninhibited temperament on him. He was like a king who had been at the top for many years. He was like an eagle that lurked in the dark night, with a powerful momentum, waiting for an opportunity to soar into the sky. Xuanhuan was definitely the strongest person she had ever met in the competition space. While Lu Muyen was scrutinizing Xuanhuan was also blatantly scrutinizing her. She had a stunning appearance and a carefree, otherworldly temperament, as well as an arrogant uninhibitedness that carried a domineering disposition melded well together. This sort of contradiction was very attractive. This woman seemed to be covered by a veil, looming, easily swaying people's hearts, and one couldn't help but want to lift the veil in person. This one is Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan's voice was indifferent and coldly proud. Lu Muyen smiled faintly, her voice clear. Lu Muyen. You are the opponent I most wanted to meet in this space. Use all your strength to fight me. A battle intent rose in Xuanhuan's eyes slowly. Lu Muyen's jet-black eyes were dotted with stars, her fighting intent rising, and her red lips parted lightly. All right. She believed that today's battle with Xuanhuan would be a hearty fight. The two of them, who were both filled with fighting intent, didn't notice that the man who was shrouded in black mist in the pendant on Lu Muyen's neck suddenly opened his eyes. He looked at the Xuanhuan with a gaze of unknown emotions, and after a while he closed his eyes again, and the black mist churned to cover his entire figure. The battle begins. Whichever side falls off the stage or admits defeat, the opponent will win the championship in this Tianling Continental Tournament for hegemony. This time, the elderly man sitting cross-legged on the stone pillar was precisely the main judge. He glanced at the two of them lightly and announced the start. Xuanhuan moved first. His entire body was filled with explosive power, and he ran towards Lu Muyen quickly, with a faint layer of black flames covering his hands. When he approached, he raised his fist and bombarded Lu Muyen with punches one after another. Lu Muyen took a few steps back and used flash steps to dodge quickly, her eyes filled with interest. A bit interesting. Unexpectedly, Xuanhuan was also a body cultivator with a spirit flame. Her blood began to boil, and the strong fighting intent filled every bit of her body. Another punch slammed down and Lu Muyen spun and met it with her punch. Bang bang. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. Fists collided with fists, and there were crisp sounds on the battle platform. Refreshing. Again. A flash of happiness appeared on Xuanhuan's cold face. It had been a long time since he fought with his fists like this, and he liked the impact of the power. Lu Muyen was also a little bit similar to Xuanhuan in this regard. The figures of the two flickered back and forth around the entire battle platform, and every time they appeared, there would be a collision of fists. Boom boom. The two fists fought for no less than hundreds of rounds. Aside for the stone pillar on which the judge sat cross-legged, the other three were actually affected by the force of the bombardments and cracked countless crevices. There was a constantly crackling sound in the space, and the scalp of the people watching grew numb. The two of them are so violent. A swordmaster watching the battle by the crystal wall couldn't help but click their tongue in admiration. The others also shrank their necks. Bombarding with their bodies with such intensity, if one weren't tough enough, they would have definitely long been killed. They had long heard that Lu Muyen sometimes fought very violently, and she spoke directly with her fists when fighting demonic beasts, but they never thought that her force would be this powerful. Of course, Xuanhuan was also very violent. He didn't show this kind of close-quarters combat when he fought with others before. Judging from the expressions on the faces of the two they occasionally revealed, they had met their match and their fighting spirit was high. Their bodies are as tough as Tier 7 demonic beasts. I think that's close. Xuanhuan's a man, so liking such a way of battle is indeed gallant, but how can Lu Muyan, a woman, like this kind of fighting style? Luo Li glanced at the person who spoke. Lu Muyan is also very gallant. At least she's more comfortable to look at than those delicate women who only hide behind men. This was in the eyes of the lover, his beloved was a beauty. Lu Muyan's violent behavior indeed didn't look crude. In fact, when the two bombarded each other, they couldn't help but feel their blood boil too. But whoever took her home to marry sure would have some things to deal with. With one wrong, wouldn't they be served with a fist? Just thinking about it made them unable to resist shuddering. Of course, many people also appreciated her toughness. After all, violent and wild beauties were also very popular on this continent. The two bombarded each other for hundreds of more rounds and the battle platform actually began to feel shaky. Seeing this, the judge on the pillar patted the pillar beneath him and a ray of light flew out. The 3 stone pillars that were cracked began to heal and the battle platform was supported once again. Piu! The final punch they threw out at each other struck the other's shoulders, and the two of them stepped back together, spraying out a mouthful of blood. The two waved their fists and palms, and they used all kinds of close-quarters combat skills, but they couldn't directly defeat the other party. We won't be able to tell the winner until dawn. I heard that you're good at swordsmanship. How about we compete with swords? Xuanhuan reached out and wiped the blood from his lips, his whole body aroused with fighting intent. The last time in the melee fight with demonic beasts he saw Lu Muyan fight close-quarters combat, but he didn't expect her physical strength and fighting skills to be no weaker than his, and was even better than him in terms of her footwork. If it weren't for the fact that he had just absorbed and refined a bottle of advanced-level beast blood before the finals and his physique had been further improved, he probably would have been defeated in the direct bombardment just now. Lu Muyan wiped the blood from the corners of her lips, appearing happy. I'll accompany you to the end. It was rare to meet an opponent who could match her. How could she not fight with all her heart? She didn't think at first that Xuanhuan wasn't only just a body cultivator, but also a sword cultivator. She hadn't yet used that set of sword techniques that she had mastered from that earth-rank sword skill. Today it was perfect to test it out on Xuanhuan. Chapter 313. Completely pissed off, the two of them unanimously removed the spirit flames covering their hands and took a few steps back each. Xuanhuan didn't pull out the giant sword he was carrying, but with a thought, a silver-white longsword was held in his hand and there was a layer of Sanskrit flowing around the sword. Lu Muyan beckoned with a wave of her hand, and a golden long sword fell into her hand with a soft hum, a feeling of unity between human and sword. They're going to sword fight. One of the swordmasters watching by the crystal wall exclaimed. Could they attack our self-esteem any more than this? These two aren't only body cultivators but also sword cultivators. Can't they let us elites of our own kingdoms live a bit? One person couldn't help but shout. They're also array masters and smiths. Comparing oneself to another could definitely infuriate oneself to death. Who's a smith? Lu Muyan was an array master that they knew. Of course it's Xuanhuan. My paternal grandfather is the elder of the outer pavilion of the smithing pavilion. According to him, Xuanhuan has already obtained the badge of a grade 3 smith. Lu Muyan is also a grade 3 array master. It seems their talents are similar. They're similar, but it's not like we can compare. Look, they're starting. On the platform, snowflakes filled the sky. 2 figures, one black and one purple, stood independently. Each time the snowflakes fell on the sides of the two, they would automatically separate without sticking to their clothes. Lu Muyan's eyes revealed a slight look of surprise. Xuanhuan's ice elemental energy attribute had also reached the great achievement realm. Xuanhuan lifted his silver long sword, and layers of water rushed towards her. The sword aura condensed into countless water waves and drowned Lu Muyan's entire body. Immediately, the blue water waves quickly froze into ice beneath the swing of the silver longsword. Lu Muyan stood quietly, her beautiful face, through the whitened ice statue, was like an otherworldly female celestial. What? Lu Muyan was trapped by Xuanhuan as an ice sculpture with just one move. The people in the hall couldn't help but feel nervous. Lu Muyan was trapped, yet they felt that it wouldn't end that easily. Lu Mu Bai and the others all revealed incomparable worry in their eyes. Xuanhuan's ice elemental energy attribute had obviously reached great achievement, and he had many means. Lu Muyan's cultivation base was one entire stage beneath his and was her biggest weakness. She wouldn't just lose like this, right? Right when everyone was confused, they only heard a crack from the ice sculpture. The ice enveloping Lu Muyan broke inch by inch, then a green vine emerged from her feet. After bursting the frost open, the green vine gradually extended and grew with luxuriant branches and leaves. The plants under the ground emerged and grew against the wind and snow. After a few breaths of time, the green plants bloomed with large flowers, fresh and beautiful, forming a stunning scenery in the fluttering wind and snow. Lu Muyan's would attribute elemental energy actually also reached the great achievement realm, heavens. Someone in the hall's eyes widened and couldn't resist shouting in shock. Xuanhuan's pupils shrank. He knew that Lu Muyan had the fire and metal elemental energy attribute. After guessing that she was an alchemist, he also thought that she could also comprehend the wood attribute elemental energy. However, he had never imagined that although her wood attribute elemental energy wasn't as strong as her fire attribute, but it had also reached the great achievement realm. Such talent was exceptionally rare. In the central castle, the elder of the medicine sect suddenly stood up and stared at the battle platform intently. Lu Muyan not only had the dual talent of fire and wood attributes, but also comprehended both until the great achievement realm. Such aptitude could be compared with that genius of the medicine sect. If she concentrated on cultivating alchemy, then it wasn't impossible to be promoted to a grade 6 alchemist in the future. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. Lu Muyan smiled slightly, and the golden long sword slipped from her hand, spun in midair, then turned into countless golden butterflies and landed atop the bright flowers. The butterflies fluttered their wings with the swaying of the flowers in the wind and snow, and a little bit of dark green powder fanned out from the butterflies' wings. After a while, the originally beautiful scenery changed instantly. The room filled with snowflakes gradually turned black, and finally turned into droplets of black water that fell to the ground. Clusters of flames drilled out from the ground, instantly burning and vaporizing them. Xuanhuan's silver longsword shone with a cold light, like a silver dragon dancing, roaring out, blasting out a series of icy hurricanes at the flowers and butterflies. The flowers were blown up and down, and soon a thick layer of frost formed. The butterflies fluttered their wings, turning into tiny golden specks. Suddenly, behind Xuanhuan, a golden longsword slashed down from the air, its sword aura breaking through the air with astonishing power. Xuanhuan was startled and waved his silver longsword to greet it. Clang! The golden sword and silver sword interlaced, creating a sharp sound. Crack! An astonishing scene appeared. After the silver longsword in Xuanhuan's hand clashed against the golden longsword, it quickly lost its luster in an astonishing manner as if breaking rotting wood, and finally cracks formed inch by inch on the sword. The mysterious Sanskrit light wound around the silver sword was covered in a layer of dark green powder, and the sword lost its liveliness. Lu Muyan, from the moment you used the wood attribute elemental energy condensation, you've already planned to use poisonous powder to corrode my silver sword, right? Xuanhuan's eyes were grim as he gripped the silver sword that had lost complete connection with him, then spoke slowly. Lu Muyan snapped her fingers, and the golden sword turned into a golden butterfly and landed on her shoulder, flapping its wings lifelike. The sword body transformation was precisely the sword technique that she had learned through mastering a set in that earth rank sword skill. Clever. When she was in the spiritual world, she majored in the cultivation of the dual elements of wood and fire. In addition, alchemists required those two attributes. In the continuous upgrade of her alchemy, she naturally had a deeper understanding of the wood attribute. The green mist sea in her dantian had the effect of bringing forth spring to withered trees, so the wood attribute entered the great achievement realm without much tough practice and insight. Her pill flame also refined many highly poisonous fusions, so what she used her wood attribute elemental energy condensation to make could all be dyed with poison. After she refined the venom sac of that peak phase tier 7 snake demon last time, the poison in the pill flame had also mutated, and it could corrode magic tools beneath Saint Treasure, so that's why she revealed her talent in the wood attribute and condensed plants. The butterflies transformed from the sword body was naturally stained with that kind of corrosive poison too. After Xuanhuan pulled out his sword, it shattered into gold powder and adhered to the silver sword. Of course, the poison wouldn't cause any corrosion damage to her natal magic tool. Lu Muyan, I really underestimated you. Xuanhuan put away the silver long sword that had been mostly destroyed, and a nameless anger rose from his chest. Lu Muyan smiled lightly, You're a smith, I believe you can re-refine the silver longsword. With my corrosive poisonous power, maybe you might have unexpected gains. I also gave you this fortuitous opportunity because I fought a hearty battle with you before. Don't misunderstand my kindness. She added with a half-smile. If Xuanhuan re-sacrifices the sword body with the poison, the quality of the sword would definitely be improved by 1 level, and it may even produce unexpected effects. The corner of Xuanhuan's mouth twitched. She was doing this for him? He spent 5 years refining this silver sword through blood and sweat. Now that most of it had been destroyed, it would take him at least another half a year to re-refine it. Of course, the benefits she said did exist and it made him interested, so when the sword was destroyed he was only angered, but didn't have the urge to kill. This woman really had the ability to piss people off but not need to pay for it with her life. Chapter 314. Deep Sea Profound Ice Iron. The sword fight between Xuanhuan and Lu Muyen surprised and shocked the audience. In the central castle, the elders of the sword sect stared at the two of them fixedly. A smile rose on his originally serious expressions. Good seedlings. He decided inwardly that no matter what, he would win the two of them over into the sword sect after the finals. Others might not be able to understand, but when they were using sword skills, the sword realm that was naturally triggered by the two wasn't something that ordinary sword cultivators would comprehend. The elders of the other sects glanced at him. They naturally knew whether they were good seedlings or not. He didn't need to remind them. However, because of the previous warning from the elder of the heavenly secret palace, this time, the elders didn't quarrel over the matter of the two, but secretly had their own plans. With the talent that Lu Muyen and Xuanhuan were revealing now, if they wanted to get them into the sect, then they would have to increase their stakes. On the battle platform, Xuanhuan's long and slim eyes narrowed and said, Lu Muyen being able to force me to use Yin Feng, you are indeed very good. Yin Feng? Is that the giant sword on your back? Lu Muyen could hear that Xuanhuan bore slight emotion towards the name Yin Feng. Yes. I haven't used it for 3 years. In the competition space, you're the first to make it reappear. Xuanhuan nodded. Lu Muyen chuckled, then isn't it a great honor for me? The giant sword on Xuanhuan's back was extraordinary. That was her first impression after seeing Xuanhuan. Lu Muyen, I will use my all, and I hope you also don't hold back any longer. Xuanhuan pulled out the giant sword from its scabbard, and an aura of deep coldness instantly spread across the entire battle platform. All right. Lu Muyen replied decisively. She would respect an opponent like Xuanhuan. If he could really force out her trump cards, then she would reveal it in front of everyone. After Xuanhuan drew his sword, a swordmaster watching the battle turned pale with fright and shouted, Deep Sea Profound Ice Iron. No wonder he didn't use this sword easily. So it turns out that his sword is made of deep sea profound ice iron. Someone stared at Xuanhuan's black giant sword that glowed with a cold light fiercely. Luoyi smiled bitterly, so he still had such a means. Big brother, will Lu Muyen lose? Luoli asked anxiously. From what can be seen, she and Xuanhuan are comparable in strength. But it's not easy to infer after Xuanhuan uses his giant sword made of deep sea profound ice iron. After all, towards Xuanhuan, who cultivates ice attribute skills, the weapon can not only increase his elemental energy attribute, but his sword and body could also unify. Luoyi said calmly. The grade of the deep-sea profound ice iron was no worse than Lu Muyen's longsword made from heavenly frost golden crystal, and in fact, it was even better in terms of the amplification effect. After all, Lu Muyen's longsword was the metal attribute, but she was at great achievement in both fire and wood attributes. Naturally, the amplification effect was relatively small, and couldn't exert its strongest power. The deep-sea profound ice iron was an extremely rare earth-rank spiritual item, hidden in the deep sea, was very difficult to find, and naturally carried a deep coldness. As long as the cultivation base of the swordmaster who wielded it rose, their comprehension of the ice attribute reached the perfection realm. After the human and sword unified as one could even freeze up to 1,000 li. On the double-edged sword in Xuanhuan's hand, there were engravings of intricate patterns, which could make one dizzy if they looked too closely. It was obviously a hidden high-level array. Made of deep-sea profound ice iron, and there's also an array and restriction enhanced by a grade 4 array master. If your sword was re-refined with heavy water, it could probably reach the level of peak quality Saint Treasure. Lu Muhan couldn't resist complimenting as well. 4 sword masters who cultivated ice attribute elemental skills, natal magic tools made of deep-sea profound ice iron could definitely rank in the top 3 of their first choice. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks, her ice attribute comprehension was only at beginner's realm, and even if she had deep-sea profound ice iron, she wouldn't be able to control that icy aura. But she could consider it in the future. After all, she could comprehend all the laws of heaven and earth, and her natal magic tool also needed all attributes. The corner of Xuanhuan's lips twitched. Heavy water was a spiritual item that even a sword saint powerhouse needed to spend decades to refine. It even required the swordmaster to be proficient in the water elemental energy attribute. Why was it that when she said it, it was as easy as eating? Do you have any heavy water, Miss Lu? I can buy it at a high price. Lu Muyen raised an eyebrow and said with a smile, I can consider selling one to you after I refine it in the future. This sentence even made a cold person like Xuanhuan roll his eyes. Could a sword master who couldn't even comprehend the water elemental law even refine heavy water? What a joke. His pupils shrank slightly. Could it be that Lu Muyen also possessed the water elemental energy law? Denbi shook his head. Lu Muyen was already a 3-attribute sword master at such a young age. How could she even comprehend the water element? If she really was so talented, then truly, couldn't she let the sword masters of the younger generation live a bit? Then this one will wait for young Miss Lau's heavy water. Although Xuanhuan didn't think Lu Muyen could really make it, but he didn't reveal it on his face. All right. Let's not speak any more nonsense, let's keep fighting. Lu Muyen nodded with a smile. As long as she broke through the foundation establishment stage and condensed her golden core, and more deeply comprehend the water attribute elemental energy that had already reached the understanding realm for a bit of time to the great achievement realm, then it wouldn't be difficult for her to refine heavy water. Xuanhuan didn't say more either. He held the dark hilt with both his hands and waved it a few times in the air. The double-edged sword made from deep-sea profound ice iron was very heavy and required a strong physique to use. This was also one of the reasons why he worked hard on cultivating body skills. The giant sword only swung a few times and the temperature around suddenly dropped. A thin layer of ice instantly covered the battle platform. The icy sword aura formed vortexes after vortexes and swept towards Lu Muyen. The ice attribute sword aura this time wasn't something the previous snowflakes could compare to. It was simply the comparison between the bright light of the moon and the light of fireflies. Wherever the vortexes went, there was no omission of ice. This time, Lu Muyen didn't wait for the ice to hit her like last time. She gestured a few strange Taoist seals with her hands in the air, and the golden longsword in front of her instantly transformed into a golden wall to temporarily block the vortexes before her. Then she tapped her toes, retreated a few meters and jumped onto a stone pillar. Standing on the stone pillar, she continued to form seals. When the golden wall was frozen by the ice and frost, although the vortexes were weakened slightly, but it was still raging as it attacked. With a flip of her hand, a cluster of orange flames leapt in her palm. In the middle of the orange flame, there was a faint cyan light beating, as if it couldn't wait to jump out. You really do have a spirit flame. Xuanhuan narrowed his eyes slightly, his expression sinking. As soon as Lu Muyen's orange flame appeared, the surrounding temperature rose exponentially, enveloping the icy cold. Go! Orange firebirds flew out of her palms one after the other continuously, raised their heads, made a long cry and flew towards the vortexes. The icy cold aura of the vortexes quickly dodged after the firebird swooped over, as if it had encountered some natural enemy, and wisps of steam emerged. The firebird's humanized eyes revealed a ferocious light, obviously not going to let go of the vortexes that were dodging, and one by one, they flew into them like moths to a flame. Chapter 315. Tragic Victory Win the Championship. Xuanhuan felt the trembling from the icy air in the vortexes. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Firebirds threw themselves into the ice vortexes one after the other. Instead of being slaughtered by the ice, however, they melted the vortexes into a pool of water. A moment later, when Xuanhuan opened his eyes again, there was actually faint dark light in his eyes. A cluster of black flames flew out of his eyes and landed in the center of the battlefield. Then he started to brandish the sword based on instinct. Lu Muyen's eyes were solemn. She knew that Xuanhuan's trump cards were all revealed. He also had a spirit flame, and the black flame on him should be the companion flame that grew with the deep-sea profound ice iron, so it was exceptionally cold. But fortunately, the energy in his spirit flame was slightly inferior to that of the orange blaze, and it could compare even less to the purple gold spirit flame. But she was only going to expose the orange blaze trump card today. The purple gold spirit flame couldn't be revealed for the time being. As soon as the black scorch appeared, the surrounding temperature gradually dropped again, and it stopped when it reached a balance. Xuanhuan's giant sword repeatedly waved around and black sword lights burst out, forming thousands of phantoms that all fell towards Lu Muyan with lingering coldness. Lu Muyan's metal attribute elemental energy attribute only touched the edge of the great achievement realm and couldn't be compared with the ice attribute elemental energy of Xuanhuan's that was after the great achievement realm. In addition, due to the enhancement of the deep-sea profound ice iron giant sword, the golden long sword that was frozen earlier could no longer be used flexibly. Her expression chilled, and with a thought, she pointed to the sky twice. Instantly, a cloud of red flames and a cloud of green mist loomed in mid-air, turning into two huge axes. They slashed down heavily at the thousands of sword shadows that spurred towards her. An axe with a blazing flame and an axe with green auras surrounding it with vitality, this was the condensation of her two primary elemental energy attributes of fire and wood at Great Achievement Realm. The thousands of black sword shadows and two axes were at a stalemate in mid-air, and they were evenly matched. Neither side could immediately annihilate the other. Xuanhuan released the huge sword in his hand and allowed it to control the sword shadows in the air. He, himself, took a step forward, and the black scorch in the center of the battle platform that was clashing against the orange flame returned to his hand. One of his hands constantly formed Taoist seals, and the other condensed the black scorch into a dark ball of light, its power transmitting out from his hand. The dark ball of light was covered with a layer of fluorescent light, which looked as bright as obsidian but with a destructive aura, and it steadily converged within the ball of light. Lu Muyan, let's decide the outcome with one move. Xuanhuan raised his head and looked at Lu Muyan deeply. At this time, Lu Muyan also condensed an orange light ball and a cyan blue cluster of light sparks flickered in the center of it. All right. That's exactly what I was thinking. Xuanhuan's trump cards were all out while she couldn't reveal too much. The orange blaze was also considered her trump card, which would make people feel amazed and fearful, but it wouldn't make them want to kill her. But if she released her purple gold spirit flame and the golden needles made from heavenly frost golden essence, then perhaps some high-level powerhouses would aim for both her spirit flame and her golden essence with the intention of looting and killing. The purple gold spirit flame had evolved after swallowing the orange blaze and the venom sac and was now something that the two spirit flames currently used in battle could not compare to. Even those powerhouses above Sword Saint would definitely be tempted when they saw it. The dark ball of light and the orange ball of light came out from the hands of the two simultaneously. The black sword shadows and the two giant axes in the air were shining brightly as well, only wanting to attack each other immediately. As soon as the two balls of light came into contact, the air of ice and aura of scorching heat instantly scurried in this space, and a dazzling light covered the entire battlefield. Boom boom. The battle platform and stone pillars that had been enhanced finally collapsed under the influence of the power of the two balls. Even the stone pillar under the judge began to climb with cracks, and finally turned into rubble with a huge crash. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. The judge flew away to dodge. Seeing that the whole building began to shake, his expressionless face couldn't resist but change, and he immediately raised a yellow flag. As soon as the array flag was raised, a light cover with strong, pressuring energy surrounded the battlefield. All the power brought by Xuanhuan and Lu Muyan's two spirit flame balls of light that had merged landed on the light cover and was completely absorbed. After the dazzling rays of light passed, there was dust all around the entire battle platform, and the platform had already collapsed, stones shattered and scattered. Those watching the battle were holding their breaths at this time, quietly waiting for the end of the battle. After a while, the smoke gradually dissipated, and everyone saw a man in black lying on a large rock. At this time, the originally stern-looking black-clothed man was wearing ragged clothes. His hair disheveled, the skin exposed was covered in blood, and his face was pale while his eyes were filled with disbelief. That's Xuanhuan? Someone in front of the crystal wall asked in disbelief. Xiao Junyao's expression appeared complicated and sighed. That's indeed Xuanhuan. His aura is weak now. I'm afraid he's seriously injured. What about Lu Muyan? Someone couldn't help but ask. This was also the question in many people's minds. The elders of the 6 major sects also stared at the crystal wall fixedly, eagerly wanting to know Lu Muyan's situation. In a bit, a figure slowly walked out of the dust. Her face was pale and she was holding a dull, golden longsword in her hand. Although the light purple clothes weren't as ragged as Xuanhuan's, but it was also damaged in several places. The hair that was originally tied was now softly scattered around her waist, making her whole person appear with a kind of delicate beauty. There was still a trace of unwiped blood on her lips. Her expression was light, but her unbridled self-confidence was still naturally unabated. Using the golden sword as a crutch, she walked slowly to Xuanhuan. Facing his complicated and deep black eyes, she said slowly, "You lost." Lu Muyan's current situation was actually not that good either. Her internal organs were damaged by the power of the black flame just now, and her spiritual energy in her body was basically exhausted. She never underestimated Xuanhuan from the beginning, but she also didn't expect that the power of his trump cards would be so powerful. If there wasn't the powerful mental energy barrier to support her, and under the condition that she didn't use the purple gold spirit flame, then maybe she would also be as seriously injured as Xuanhuan, unable to move or even fall unconscious. This time she did win Xuanhuan, but it was only a tragic victory, which also made her determination to pursue the path of the strong even stronger. She must become more powerful. Xuanhuan closed his eyes. He didn't even have the strength to move his fingers, let alone the ability to continue fighting back. Yes, I lost. Although he was convinced by the defeat, but the desire to become stronger only grew in his heart. Lu Muyan was indeed a very strong opponent. Even after all his means and trump cards were used, he still lost. He didn't lose wrongfully. The judge's eyes were filled with surprise. In fact, from the beginning of the battle, he was more optimistic about Xuanhuan. He didn't expect Lu Muyan to not only have such a variety of tricks, but her strength also shouldn't be underestimated. Her win this time didn't have any loopholes to pick. She really did defeat Xuanhuan by virtue of her strength. Lu Muyan wins the last match. A seemingly faint mental energy entered this room and sounded in the judge's sea of consciousness. After a moment, with a faint smile on his serious face, he said, "On behalf of the organizers, I announce that the champion of this Tianling Continental Tournament for Hegemony is Lu Muyan from Yanzhou Kingdom in the eastern region." At this time, the swordmasters in front of the crystal wall were eerily quiet, obviously not having recovered from the battle just now. Chapter 316. Go poke a scarlet bee's nest. Only after the main judge announced it, there was a burst of inhalation in the hall. Lu Muyan actually won the championship. That's incredible. Yeah. The battle between her and Xuanhuan was so exciting, I'm still amazed about it when I think of it. The battle between Lu Muyan and Xuanhuan wasn't only a showdown of strength, but also a battle of minds. The fighting methods used between the two were exceptionally exciting. Even a fight between venerable swordmasters might not compare. Lu Muyan was at a disadvantageous position from the beginning due to the disparity in cultivation base, but with her extraordinary mind, she led Xuanhuan into her game step by step. First, she destroyed the silver longsword he was accustomed to using, then used the advantage of the fire and wood dual elemental energy comprehension that she had comprehended to the great achievement stage to hold back Xuanhuan's thousand shadow sword skill he shot from his huge deep-sea profound ice iron sword. In fact, many of the people present were wondering how Lu Muyan resisted Xuanhuan's ferocious black flame ball. After all, if it were one of them, if they directly withstood that move, even if they didn't die, they'd be half crippled. Luo Yi and the others who lost against Xuanhuan couldn't help but be moved. It turned out that Xuanhuan was so powerful. They didn't wrongfully lose. But Lu Muyan defeated Xuanhuan. This also meant that she was stronger than them, and it also aroused the valor of them men. I really didn't expect that, aside from Lord Luo, those who entered the top 3 this time were actually 2 sword masters from little-known small kingdoms, and I have to admit that they're both indeed very strong. An elite genius from a superpower kingdom smiled bitterly. Comparing oneself to another could definitely infuriate oneself to death. We can't envy their talent. Who would have expected that the trump cards of those 2 are so powerful? Not only are they both sword cultivators, but they also possess spirit flames. Someone said enviously. Presumably, the 2 of them encountered a fortuitous opportunity before coming into this space. Xuanhuan's giant sword is made from deep-sea profound ice iron, and Lu Muyan's golden sword is also refined from heavenly frost golden crystal and various rare spars. If it weren't that her metal attribute elemental energy hadn't reached great achievement realm, otherwise the power of her golden longsword definitely wouldn't be weaker than Xuanhuan's giant sword. After all, the value of the deep-sea profound ice iron and the heavenly frost golden crystal are both earth-rank spiritual items. Lu Muyan's natal magic tool was engraved with a small array to hide the material used for refining the sword body, but in the fight with Xuanhuan just now, after being frozen by the deep-sea profound ice iron, the array was damaged, and so also exposed its original form. Therefore, it was normal for smiths above grade 2 to recognize its original appearance. TSK, I only thought that Lu Muyan's golden sword was very powerful before, but I didn't expect it to be made of heavenly frost golden crystal. But why couldn't we recognize it before? Someone asked in confusion. An array master said, she arranged an array on the golden sword. So that's how it is. There was an endless stream of discussions below, all revolving around Lu Muyan and Xuanhuan. Many even revealed expressions of pain because they had put all their bets on Xuanhuan. Meanwhile, Sinan and the others happily took the spiritual stones that they won from betting on Lu Muyan. In the central castle, the elder of the 8 extremes sect glowed with an exceptional brilliance, as if he was the one that won. How Shan, old man, give me the array chart now. As expected, this old man has good eyesight. His old face was like a wrinkled chrysanthemum as he smiled. The elder of the vast mountain sect rolled his eyes, displeased, but still tossed him the set of array charts that he had so much difficulty obtaining with an expression as if his flesh hurt. Take it. When he was finished, he cursed inwardly, after lousy digs Lu Muyan to the vast mountain sect, he'll make sure you can't even find a place to cry. I really didn't expect that the final winner would be Lu Muyan, that little girl. Her talent is indeed extraordinary. The elder of the medicine sect was most optimistic about Lu Muyan among the sword masters in this competition. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. The first condition for an alchemist was for them to be able to possess the dual elemental energy attributes of fire and wood. The deeper the comprehension of the two attributes, the more conducive to improving the grade of an alchemist. Even a grade 4 alchemist such as himself only owned the wood attribute at Great Achievement Realm. If Lu Muyan was brought to the medicine sect to train, her future would be boundless. Of course, the other sect elders sitting here all had the same idea in their hearts. They wouldn't miss Xuanhuan, but they must win Lu Muyan. After the competition, Lu Muyan and Xuanhuan didn't leave immediately, but instead, quickly recovered from their injuries and cultivation base. Half a day later, the main judge's voice sounded again in the building. After the finals of the Tianling Continental Tournament for Hegemony is over, us organizers will activate the Great Spiritual Gathering Array a quarter of an hour from now to concentrate the surrounding spiritual force in this mountain forest here. You have 10 days to absorb and improve your cultivation base. 10 days later, everyone will return to the building hall on the top of the mountain to gather, and the elders of the 6 major sects will personally select the sword masters who enter their sects. The Continental Tournament for Hegemony has expressly stipulated that the top 10 sword masters in the finals have the right to freely choose among the 6 major sects, so we will pass the information about the 6 major sects to the identity jade tablets of the top 10 people through an array. You will properly decide which sect you want to join in these 10 days. As for the other 90 people, you will wait for the elders of the 6 major sects to allocate your places. As for which sect you go to in the end, it's not up to you to decide. Alright. The Great Array is about to activate. You can leave to cultivate deeply in the 10 days. Senior Judge, can I ask a question? Lu Muyan said after thinking for a bit. The judge was slightly surprised, but he still liked Lu Muyan, so he replied, Ask. Are we going to be sent out of this space after choosing the sect in 10 days? Lu Muyan asked. Yes. After 10 days, the Great Array will teleport all the people gathered in the hall out of this space. Lu Muyan furrowed her brows. As expected. Then can we leave this mountain in the 10 days? After hearing her question, many people couldn't help but twitch the corners of their lips. Once the Spirit Gathering Array activated, the spiritual force on this mountain would be several times that of the outside. Only fools would leave this mountain to go out. Yes, but you must come back and gather in 10 days, otherwise it will automatically be regarded as giving up the opportunity to enter the 6 major sects. I've finished asking my questions. Thank you, Senior, for clarifying my doubts. No problem. You can all leave now. Of course, if you choose to cultivate in this hall, you can also stay. Lu Muyan didn't leave immediately. After the previous battle, she already felt that a breakthrough was coming, so she closed her eyes and began to cultivate to break through to peak phase sword monarch. Xuanhuan also didn't consider leaving this place to find somewhere to cultivate, so he also sat cross-legged on another side. Many of the people present had no plans to leave. After all, after the Spirit Gathering Array was activated, their goal was to absorb the spiritual force crazily. There was no need to venture out in danger. A small number of people left the hall for various reasons. But Lu Mu Bai and the others naturally remained. 3 days later, Lu Muyan didn't go to the lobby to find Lu Mu Bai and the others, but after telepathically sending word to them, she called Yi Qinghan and left quietly. After another 2 days, two figures emerged outside the forested mountains of the finals and headed towards a deep mountain. Lu Muyen had been thinking about those scarlet bees for a long time. If she was teleported out of this competition space, then she would miss the opportunity, so she couldn't wait as she called xuanhuan to go poke the scarlet bee's nest together. Chapter 317. The method of raising. Lu Muyen took xuanhuan to the place where she provoked the scarlet bee's nest last time. Muyen, do you want to contract those scarlet bees? Xuanhuan looked at the fist-sized scarlet bees with purely red bodies and his scalp felt numb. The scarlet bees were social demonic beasts. If they were separated, their combat power wouldn't be strong, but if they were dispatched in groups, even the powerhouses Sword Venerable and above would have a headache. The scarlet bees had several attributes. Their tail thorn wasn't only highly poisonous, but also paralyzing. It was one of the demonic beasts that human swordmasters and many other demonic beasts were most reluctant to provoke. He didn't expect Lu Muyen to have ideas for the scarlet bees. At the same time as being helpless, he was filled with pampering. No, I just want to make a contract with the Scarlet Bee Empress. These scarlet bees are all grown up, so they won't live long after contracting. And it's a waste of mental energy to contract so many scarlet bees. Lu Muyen shook her head. Xuanhuan understood. True. If you can contract the Scarlet Bee Empress, then each time she laid eggs, the scarlet bees would be branded with your mental energy and would obey your commands without needing to contract. However, the Scarlet Bee Empress isn't that easy to contract. The Empress inside has to at least be tier 7 and maybe even tier 8. It's different from other ordinary demon cultivators. Although its own combat power is weak, but there are tens of thousands of Scarlet Bee guards. He thought for a bit then added. Lu Muyen also knew that the Scarlet Bee Empress was difficult to contract, but she had come up with a solution recently. I have a solution, but I need Xuanhuan to help me. Sure. Xuanhuan would never refuse any of Lu Muyen's requests and was very happy that she could ask him for help. Lu Muyen was just about to speak when there were sudden bursts of piercing screams from the bee nest in the distance. That voice was filled with extreme pain and exhaustion, and pressure filled the area. It's the cry of the Scarlet Bee Empress. Xuanhuan's face sank. Hearing this sound, she's a tier 8 demonic beast. Do you know why she screamed like this? Lu Muyen looked sideways and asked. She knew the ancient contract skill and knew a lot about demonic beasts, but this was still limited to the immortal cultivation world. There were many demonic beasts on this continent that she had never even heard of before. In the immortal cultivation realm, there were gold-devouring insects but no scarlet bees. The only reason she knew of scarlet bees was because she had read it in the Continental Demonic Beast records in the Academy Library, but the records were only general and not detailed. Compared to Xuanhuan, who came from a distinguished clan of spirit beast masters, she definitely didn't know as much as he did. She's birthing offspring right now. Xuanhuan pressed his lips and said, she should have reached the end of her lifespan. Birthing offspring? You mean she's giving birth to a new Scarlet Bee Empress? Lu Muyen asked with furrowed brows. Each generation of Scarlet Bee Empress would desperately give birth to a new Scarlet Bee Empress when their lifespan was near its end, and when she was giving birth, the entire hive was at its strongest. Those scarlet bees wouldn't leave the hive no matter what happened. The plan she had prepared before seemed to be in vain. Yes. The center of the hive is filled with scarlet bees from tier 6 to tier 7. She's not far from giving birth. The screams just now means that she should have just started giving birth. Xuanhuan said. Lu Muyen rubbed her chin and sighed. I originally wanted to lure them away from the hive in waves with spiritual herbs that the scarlet bees like, but now it wouldn't seem to work. Her initial plan was to make Bingji and Xuanhuan's Golden Eagle King hold the spiritual herbs to lure the scarlet bees away, and then she and Xuanhuan would take the opportunity to go in and capture the Scarlet Bee Empress. Now that the end of the Scarlet Bee Empress lifespan was approaching, even if she contracted her now, her lifespan would only be extended for a few months at most, and the contract value had been lost. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. Actually, it's not necessarily a bad thing for the Scarlet Bee Empress to die. Xuanhuan thought a bit, then a wise smile rose on his handsome face. Lu Muyen blinked and asked, what do you mean? The Scarlet Bee Empress is a tier 8 demonic beast right now, so it wouldn't be easy to contract, and it would also be difficult to raise and nurture. After all, she's already used to being the only one in this space. But now that she's about to give birth, we just need to wait for her to give birth to a new empress, and you can directly contract the newly born Scarlet Bee Empress. Xuanhuan smiled lightly and said, Lu Muyen smiled helplessly. It's a good plan, but I don't know how to raise a Scarlet Bee Empress. Even if the contract is successful, but it'll be difficult for it to survive. She naturally thought of contracting the new Scarlet Bee Empress before, but Scarlet Bees were different from other demonic beasts. The newly born Empress was very fragile. If she took it away from the hive without the method of raising it, then 90% of them would die prematurely. I have its raising method here. Xuanhuan smiled lightly. With a thought, a jade slip fell into his hand. He handed it to Lu Muyen and said, Muyen, I copied this method of raising from my clan's secret classics. I'll gift it to you now. It's copied from your clan's secret classics? Can you give it to me? If it's inconvenient, then you don't need to. It's not like I have to contract a Scarlet Bee Empress. Lu Muyen didn't want Xuanhuan to be in a difficult position. After all, the precious secret classics of clans weren't allowed to be leaked by clan pupils. Xuanhuan shoved it into her hands with a smile. No worries. This is what mother left me. The people in the clan aren't qualified to interfere with me. The Yi clan had regulations that didn't allow the disclosure of the secret classics of how to breed demonic beasts, but this secret classic was left to him by his mother and didn't belong to the Yi clan. It was just that his father had put it into the clan's classics library to encrypt and hide it, but the owner was still him. And his mother once said that if he liked a woman who was also a spirit beast master, then he could copy and gift this secret classic to her. Even if they weren't fated in the end, it could still leave a memory as a souvenir. His mother was a very open-minded and wonderful woman. Lu Muyen saw that although he had a smile on his face, there was a bit of desolation in his eyes. Remembering his experience at home, she couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. Xuanhuan's mother's background should be extraordinary, otherwise he wouldn't have so many secrets. But also because of this, he must have endured more things than others. Then I won't be polite and ill accept it. Lu Muyen didn't want to brush off Xuanhuan's kindness. And she indeed needed such a method of raising. Look at the breeding method of the Scarlet Bee Empress. Let's wait here for her to give birth. Xuanhuan said. All right. Lu Muyen's mental energy penetrated into the jade slip and looked at it carefully, becoming more and more alarmed. She would furrow her brows at times while at other times, her eyes would sparkle as if she had comprehended something. This copy of the jade slip contained not only the raising methods of scarlet bees, but also the introduction and raising methods of no less than 100 rare demonic beasts. Its preciousness could only be imagined. After scrutinizing the raising methods of scarlet bees, she just realized that it was indeed fortunate that she had brought Xuanhuan together. Otherwise, if she raised according to her own feelings, then that new empress might not survive for 10 years in her hands. In such a way, Lu Muyen studied the raising method in the secret classic, while Xuanhuan cultivated by her side, and 2 days passed quickly. On this day the sky had only just lit, and the harsh screams in the distant hive gradually stopped. The aura also gradually weakened, indicating that the old generation of the Scarlet Bee Empress was about to pass away. After another half a day, Lu Muyen and Xuanhuan looked at each other and quietly felt their way towards the hive. Chapter 318 Millennium-Old Royal Jelly. Lu Muyen handed Xuanhuan a talisman when approaching the hive. This is an invisibility talisman. As long as it's attached to your body, and we don't use elemental energy, we won't be discovered. We'll feel our way to the Scarlet Bee Empress nest in a bit and run away immediately after the contract is completed. This was the talisman that she spent a lot of effort refining before, but she didn't expect to use it. Seeing her sneaky, thief-like appearance, Xuanhuan said with amusement, "All right." After the two stuck on the talisman, their figures and aura disappeared instantly, and they walked quietly towards the center of the hive. The Scarlet Bee's hive was very large, more than 5 meters high, and the outside was filled with tier 6 and 7 scarlet bees patrolling back and forth. The scarlet bees were a relatively special type of demonic beast, because it was directly birthed and controlled by the Empress of the Scarlet Bees, so their intelligence wasn't that high, and they couldn't transform into the human form. The Scarlet Red Empress needed to reach tier 9 to be able to transform into human form, but her intelligence was relatively high. The two entered the central nest, which was filled with royal jelly, and there was a crooked cave in the nest. Going down the cave, the age of the royal jelly continued to grow, and it took about an hour to come to an end. At the end, surrounded by orange-yellow millennium-old royal jelly, Lu Muyen's eyes lit up. This royal jelly was a good thing. It could not only improve one's cultivation base, but also had the effect of maintaining beauty and youthfulness, and was one of the main ingredients for refining the beauty-enhancing pill and the beauty-preserving pill. Xuanhuan, with this millennium-old royal jelly, we can refine the beauty-preserving pill that helps one maintain youth and immortal beauty. I'll give you a few by then and your appearance will last forever. Lu Muyen said excitedly to Yi Qinghan telepathically. All women loved beauty, even Lu Muyen was no exception. In her previous life she took a beauty-preserving pill to stay young forever. In this life she naturally wouldn't let herself become a gray-haired, wrinkled old woman. Yi Qinghan had a smile on his lips. There's such pills? If Lu Muyen refined this kind of pill, then those female sword cultivators would probably all go crazy. Lu Muyen raised her chin and said with slight tsundere, of course. And only I know about the pill formula. The beauty-enhancing pill could beautify one's appearance, and one's face would appear younger and younger, but it was only useful if one took it long-term. On the other hand, the beauty-preserving pill could keep one's youthful appearance forever, but the main ingredients for refining this pill required several rare spiritual herbs and she didn't have it all. When she accidentally broke into this scarlet bee's hive before, she already had the idea to take the royal jelly, and when she refined the beauty-enhancing pill and sold it, she would not only make huge money but it was also a long-term business. There was no figure of the Scarlet Bee Empress here. Lu Muyen used her mental energy to sweep around constantly, then finally discovered that there was a faint aura coming from a piece of royal jelly. She walked over quickly and entered the royal jelly with Yi Qinghan. Sure enough, there was a door made of honeycombs behind the royal jelly. Pushing through the door and into it was a small space. The light in the space was very good, and there were several corpses of the Scarlet Bee Empress within. The newest one's life force dissipated just before they entered, and the corpse was relatively large. Beside her was a crystal clear and transparent honey-yellow bee pupa, with a strong beating aura of life. Muyen, quickly go make a contract. Yi Qinghan said. Lu Muyen took off her invisibility talisman and walked cautiously in front of the bee pupa. After finding that there weren't any strange changes, she quickly dropped a drop of blood essence onto the pupa. Then she chanted a difficult incantation silently as she constantly formed seals. Circles of jade-colored light covers enveloped her and the bee pupa. After an hour, the jade-colored light cover lit up and turned into two streams of light that entered into Lu Muyen and the bee pupa's bodies respectfully. Lu Muyen wiped the fine sweat on her forehead. Although this new Scarlet Bee Empress was just birthed, but its mental energy was exceptionally strong. If it weren't for her mental energy being even stronger than that of the bee pupa, then she would have been backlashed. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks Muyen, how is it? Yi Qinghan asked with concern. Lu Muyen smiled lightly and said, this bee pupa's mental energy is so strong that I almost failed. Even you almost failed with your mental energy? Yi Qinghan said in surprise, no wonder we've never heard of someone contracting the Scarlet Bee Empress. So it's because their mental energy is too strong and can't be contracted. Lu Muyen's mental energy was several times or even more than 10 of times his, yet she almost failed. Then it really was that few people could contract this kind of demonic beast. He used to wonder why those high-level spirit beast masters didn't contract social demonic beasts like the scarlet bees. Once successfully contracting such demonic beasts, then they would definitely be exceptionally powerful. So it seemed that it was because they were too difficult to contract. Scarlet bee swarms weren't only difficult to find, but also required the spirit beast master to have stronger mental energy than the Scarlet Bee Empress. It truly was difficult to meet those two conditions. Yeah. Fortunately we're lucky. The two of them continued to condense and support the cyan light and orange light cover, but they couldn't stand the deadly attack of the Scarlet Bee swarm. The scarlet bees were like moths to a flame. Even if they died, they wanted to drag them back. In the end, the two had to try their best to escape the scarlet bee's nest. The moment Lu Muyen exited, she had Bingji return to his original form and escape quickly. But the scarlet bees behind followed closely, and if anyone was present they would definitely be shocked. One would see a huge ice luan flying towards the outside of the mountain as a beam of light, chased by swarms of scarlet bees behind. However spectacular and magnificent one pictured this scene, it would be so. Lu Muyen and Yi Qinghan sat on Bingji and kept changing directions as they flew, followed by a large swarm of scarlet bees. We've been outside wandering for more than 2 days. If we don't go back now, we won't be able to catch up with the selection of our sects. Lu Muyen turned to look at the dark mass of scarlet bees and held her forehead wordlessly. Yi Qinghan was also quite helpless. He didn't expect that the scarlet bees would chase after them so stubbornly that they couldn't even escape them after 2 days. How about we go back to the top of the mountain? As soon as the spirit gathering array activates, the great array around the building will also open, and demonic beasts tier 9 and below can't get in at all. There are too many scarlet bees and they couldn't kill them all at all. Besides, there were thousands of tier 7s. If they didn't want to die, then they really couldn't fight them head-on. And as long as they were still in this space, these scarlet bees wouldn't give up. After all, they had taken their new empress away. Alright, that's all that's left to do. Lu Muyen nodded in agreement and let Bing Ji fly towards the last gathering place. Half a day later, everyone except Yi Qinghan and Lu Muyen gathered in an open space outside the building. Lu Mu Bai and the others' expressions were a little anxious, worried that something had happened to the two of them. Luo Li and the others were also filled with worry. He asked Lu Mu Bai and the others, "Where did Lu Muyen go? Why hasn't she come back yet?" "Don't know. She only said she would go out for a few days." Lu Mu Bai sighed, then said firmly, "Yenner will definitely be back." The end was getting closer and closer. When the elders of the 6 major sects appeared, the hearts of Lu Mu Bai and the others sank. When the elders of the 6 major sects arrived at the open space, they immediately found that Lu Muyen was gone. Just when the strong and sturdy elderly man of the 8 extremes sect wanted to ask, suddenly, a cyan blue light rushed over from the distant horizon and 2 figures in exceptionally sorry states leapt off from the xuanhuan. Everyone looked at the 2 people whose clothes and hair were a little messy. Before they could speak, there was a sudden burst of harsh, buzz-buzz sounds from the sky from far to near. Immediately, an overwhelming black shadow shrouded the sky outside the array. "What's this?" someone exclaimed. "Heavens, why are there so many scarlet bees?" One of them recognized the swarm of demonic beasts. When many people heard the word scarlet bees, their expressions changed greatly, and their scalps became numb. They all took out their magic tools, prepared to escape. However, as soon as the swarm of scarlet bees approached the building, a distant white light cover immediately appeared from the ground and covered the surroundings. The swarms of scarlet bees slammed against the light cover shield one after another, but couldn't take a step further. Many scarlet bees were even killed by the power activated by the great array as soon as they touched the white light circle. Some scarlet bees continuously rushed towards the great array without fear of death, then was finally swept away by a white projection force from the array, finally annihilated in this space. Seeing this, the scarlet bees behind didn't dare to rush forward, and could only glare at Lu Muyen and Yi Qinghan with bared fangs. The people present were all relieved when they saw this, then turned their attention to Lu Muyen and Yi Qinghan. "Lu Muyen, this woman sure could cause so much trouble. It's only been a few days and she already attracted such a large swarm of scarlet bees. Didn't she want her life anymore? Lu Muyen, even if you don't want to live, don't harm us too." A swordmaster who usually didn't like her said with an unpleasant expression. "Come and read on our website wuxialover site." Thanks. Lu Muyen shrugged roguishly and said, "I was going to come back to participate in the final selection, but they just wanted to follow me, I can't help it." She and Yi Qinghan dared to lead them here because they knew of the existence of the Great Array, otherwise even if they gave up the selection, they wouldn't bring the scarlet bees here to harm the others. They weren't so cold-blooded. "You're distorting my words and reason." The man shuddered when he saw her eyes growing colder, then snorted and turned his head away, saying no more. Lu Muyen won the championship in the Tianling Continental Tournament for hegemony. In the future, regardless of which sect she entered, she would definitely be the target of their training, plus her strength was indeed really strong, so it was best not to provoke her. After all, although she attracted the scarlet bees, but they were blocked outside by the organizer's great array, and they weren't in any danger. Seeing that many people didn't say anything but their expressions weren't that good, after thinking about it, Lu Muyen took out a bucket of century-old royal jelly, blinked and said innocently, "We were only thinking about how everyone participated in this competition together, but now we would separate, so I should send some gifts, so I went to dig the scarlet bee's hive and get some royal jelly for you all as a souvenir." Seeing her innocent expression and hearing her words, everyone couldn't help but twitch the corners of their lips. Whoever believed in her words was being preposterous. However, hearing her say that, the people present wasn't bothered with holding a grudge anymore. Most importantly, scarlet bee royal jelly was something good. Regular drinking could prolong one's life, and improve cultivation base and beauty. The scarlet bees had the innate talent to hide its aura, and it was difficult even for a sword venerable powerhouse to find them. Last time, Lu Muyen chased a demonic beast and accidentally entered there, then made a mark, Otherwise it would be difficult to find the scarlet bee's lair again if she tried to look for it on purpose. Haha, little Lou girl sure is generous. This century-old scarlet bee royal jelly is a good thing. The elder of the 8 Extremes sect happily walked to Lu Muyen and looked down at the royal jelly in the bucket, smacking his lips. He loved delicious spiritual items the most, and this royal jelly was one of them. If he could get some to give to a spiritual wine master to brew into honey wine, then its taste could make one drool 3 inches. Honey wine also had the effects of expanding blood vessels, strengthening the body and prolonging life. Lu Muyen saw that the red-haired elderly man's nose was about to touch the bucket, and the corner of her lips twitched. But she felt a little more favorable towards his straightforward appearance. The other elders of the 6 major sects also revealed surprise and enthusiasm in their eyes when they saw the royal jelly. How should I address this senior? Due to politeness, Lu Muyen asked with a smile. The elder of the 8 Extremes sect raised his head reluctantly, his old face smiled into a chrysanthemum. This old man is the elder of the 8 Extremes sect Ao Rong. Why, does little Lu girl want to give me some royal jelly as a souvenir? The other elders of the 6 major sects couldn't help but twitch the corners of their lips. Ao Rong, this thing sure was so shameless and skinless. To think he wasn't embarrassed to ask for something from a junior. Lu Muyen smiled sincerely. Sure. Everyone who sees has a share. Not only senior but also the seniors from other sects. It can also be regarded as a meeting gift from this junior towards seniors. Her subtext actually meant, I've already given you a meeting gift, would you be shameless enough not to return the gift? Since she took out a bucket of royal jelly to share with everyone, she naturally wouldn't ignore the elders of the 6 major sects. Lu Muyen robbed the entire hive of royal jelly. This century-old royal jelly was actually what she casually swept up on the way out of the cave, and she had hundreds of barrels of it in her space. She also had hundreds of barrels of centuries-old and even millennium-old royal jelly, so it was really trivial to take out a barrel to dispel everyone's grievances and win people's hearts. Seeing Lu Muyen's generosity, other people felt their flesh hurt. Didn't she know the value of century-old royal jelly? It would take at least tens of thousands of spiritual stones to buy a barrel like this, was often priceless on the market, and was most popular among female sword masters. Her rich local tyrant appearance that looked like she was saying Laonyang had money really looked like she deserved a beating. Chapter 320. Make up random excuses. The other elders of the 6 major sects naturally felt comfortable when they heard Lu Muyen say this. They were also very interested in the century-old royal jelly, but they couldn't be as shameless and skinless as Ao Rong to take the initiative to ask for it. Little Lu girl is so generous, this old man likes a junior like you. Ao Rong stroked his beard and smiled. He felt that Lu Muyen was more and more pleasing to the eye now. Before, it was mainly because of her talent, but now it was because her temperament suited his appetite. Such a good seedling must be dug into the 8 Extremes sect. Thank you for your love, senior. Lu Muyen smiled humbly. Buzz buzz. A harsh scream came and the scarlet bees chasing Lu Muyen flew wave after wave towards them from the distance, a huge dark mass. Under the control of the several Tier 7 scarlet bees, the Tier 6 scarlet bees desperately clashed against the white light cover. One wave was killed by the array, but another wave would rush up again, unafraid of death. And all the scarlet bees were glaring fiercely at Lu Muyen and xuanhuan, baring their fangs. They had clearly recognized their appearance and aura. Lu Muyen and xuanhuan glanced at each other and discovered the speechlessness in each other's eyes. These scarlet bees really didn't give up. The scarlet bees rushed against the array desperately, clashing again even after a wave died, and after clashing those would die too. The people present weren't fools, so they naturally wouldn't believe Lu Muyen's excuse, nor would they believe that she only had such an amount of century-old royal jelly. Lu Muyen, just what did you do to these scarlet bees? Why do they look at you and xuanhuan as if they're trying to kill the people that killed their family? Some people guessed that Lu Muyen and xuanhuan definitely must have gotten something good in the scarlet bee's nest, otherwise they wouldn't be hunted down by the scarlet bee swarm. Lu Muyen then revealed an innocent expression. xuanhuan and I discovered the scarlet bee nest accidentally, then we thought about obtaining some royal jelly back. But who knew that we only got 2 barrels before being discovered by the Scarlet Bee Empress? She screamed and called for her companions relentlessly. We could only take action, then cut off one of her wings, so we completely caused trouble and were chased by these scarlet bees for several days. Then she took out the Bee Empress wing that she had dismembered long ago from her interspatial ring. And as if to confirm what she said, those scarlet bees went crazy when they saw the translucent wing, and all of them glared with their crimson eyes, rushing against the array regardless of their deaths, as if to snatch the wing back. After listening to Lu Muyan's explanation and when they saw the severed wing, everyone was in a complete mess. Just what kind of guts did she grow? She actually dared to take xuanhuan to poke a scarlet bee's nest. Not only that, but also cut off the wing of the scarlet bee empress. It would be utterly weird if those scarlet bees didn't fight you. Everyone agreed inwardly that it was Lu Muyan who encouraged xuanhuan to go. Only this crazy woman would do such a crazy act. A stable person like xuanhuan was definitely dragged there. Well, one must say these people saw the truth. Cough cough. Ao Rong glanced at the wing on the ground, then looked up at the scarlet bees who were madly beating outside the array, and he couldn't help twitching the corners of his lips. Even he didn't dare go provoke the scarlet bees. Lu Muyan, this girl sure was too courageous. Anyone who knew anything about the scarlet bees knew that the most important thing on the scarlet bee empress wasn't her gestational sac, but her wings. Her wings could naturally absorb the spiritual force of heaven and earth and convert it into something that could help her fertility. Only after the scarlet bee empress absorbed it could she continuously breed scarlet bee colonies. Come and read on our website wuxialover site. Thanks. Lu Muyan chopped off one of the wings that they depended on for survival, and even ran away with it. It was no wonder that the scarlet bee empress went crazy. It was only excusable for her ordering the swarm to hunt down and attack Lu Muyan and xuanhuan. Little Lu girl, how did you cut off the wing of the scarlet bee empress? The elder of the spirit tamers sect thought very highly of the both of them, and asked with a gentle tone. How could the two of them who only had sword sovereign strength have penetrated into the scarlet bee hive? This was the question in everyone's heart. Lu Muyan blinked, took out a used invisibility talisman and said, "Xuanhuan has this thing, so we dared to sneak all the way in to get the royal jelly. Who knew that we were then stared at by a pair of big eyes after only 2 barrels were filled? After hearing her screech, we didn't think much at the time, and I just used our strongest sword skill to attack it. Before it could resist, I cut off the scarlet bee empress wing, then we ran away with this wing." After finishing, she sighed regretfully, "It's a pity that I only got 2 barrels of royal jelly." She naturally wouldn't expose the contract with the new empress, let alone make them suspect that she got something good. Therefore, before deciding to lead the scarlet bees back to the top of the mountain, she had thought out a countermeasure and excuse, and wouldn't worry that they wouldn't believe it. Those scarlet bees looked at her and xuanhuan as if they had a feud large enough to destroy one's family. If it were only for 2 barrels of royal jelly, it was impossible. So with her telling them this, they would at least be half believing. Her current cultivation base wasn't high, and the principle of not revealing her wealth worked everywhere. If the spirit tamer sect knew that she had the bee pupa of the scarlet bee empress on her, then they would probably use any means to snatch it away. Seeing the bit of annoyance on her stunning little face, not at all worried about the scarlet bees, but instead looking as if she had suffered a loss to only obtain 2 barrels of royal jelly, everyone present rolled their eyes inwardly. You already obtained 2 barrels, what more do you want? And one of the most important wings of the empress was cut off by you too. This was a priceless treasure. The scarlet bee empress wings were one of the peak quality materials for refining magic tools. Wasn't she going to make a fortune? And yet she was still unsatisfied. How should they, people who are feeling jealousy, envy and hatred, feel? There was an arc on xuanhuan's lips. Lu Muyan sure could make up stories so well. He didn't dislike such a personality, and on the contrary, such an appearance made him feel that she was very cute. He was from a distinguished clan in the eastern region, so it was reasonable to say that he had 1 or 2 invisibility talismans on him. After all, their Yi clan also had a solid foundation. However, if the invisibility talisman was made known to others that Lu Muyan made it, then it would be difficult to explain. The Lu clan definitely wouldn't be able to afford such a talisman. Lu Muyan didn't want to reveal that she knew how to refine talismans. Although the scarlet bee swarm is strong, but the scarlet bee empress is very fragile. It's normal for you to successfully attack her and cut off one of her wings. Ao Rong then looked at the two of them disapprovingly and said, "But your approach is too risky. It isn't impossible to be buried in the hive in order to just get some royal jelly. In the future you should focus on protecting your life and safety." "Thank you for your teachings, senior," the two of them said simultaneously. Although Ao Rong's words were reprimanding, but they were also for their own good, and neither of them would quarrel with him. It was rare for the other elders to agree with Ao Rong's words unanimously. If the two of them died just because of some rare royal jelly, then it would be a loss for their 6 major sects. After all, both of them were in the top 10. After hearing Lu Muyan's explanation, Seeing the wing she took out and the madness of the scarlet bees, everyone present believed her words and no longer doubted that she obtained some kind of treasure, hence being chased by the scarlet bees. You're tuning in to this Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.